Yo, it's your boy Ryan, Northwest Sports Fanatics, back at you with a new video. Today is Thursday, December 4th, 2025, with your boy Ryan and the Northwest Sports Fanatics. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Smash that like button either now or on your way out. Donate to your boy if you can. Cash App $ ORIONNWSF or the YouTube Super Chat right here. We got Thursday night football and a good one here this evening. The Dallas Cowboys versus the Detroit Lions. Kickoff is going to be here in roughly 4 minutes. So let's cue up the music, take a look at the thumb, and let's get settled in for some Thursday night football. Happy Thursday, everyone. Underrated quarterbacks in the game, Dak Prescott, and on the right, the most explosive running back in the game, Jahmyr Gibbs. Can't wait to be able to see how this one plays out. And man, again, Cowboys winning 3 in a row with Dak after starting off 3-5. The Cowboys, again, have started to become one of those teams that, even though in the past people would always talk Super Bowl when they weren't really worthy, but this might be the first time in quite a while where the Cowboys are actually fun to watch. And again, they've definitely started to get on a little bit of a run after picking up Quinnen Williams. But I do think the Cowboys legitimately have a chance here tonight. Now, they're only 2-4 on the road, so obviously it's going to be a big challenge. And normally when Detroit loses a game, they typically win the next. So 7-5 record, 4-2 at home. Detroit definitely has the heavy advantage. But if Dak can get early points with Pickens or CeeDee Lamb or Javonte Williams, and they can strike early, and not only early but often, this could end up coming down to a high-scoring affair that, possibly whoever has the ball last could win, like a 38-35 type of game. I assume there's going to be a little bit of defense here and there, but it should be an offensive powerhouse, so to speak, as long as we don't have any injuries. Obviously, we know Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, that connection obviously has been, pretty good this season. And obviously he went out on the first play there on that Thanksgiving game, but he's going to roll the dice and give it a go. So hopefully we'll be able to see Goff to Amon-Ra. But really with Detroit, they're a very heavy running team. So David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs will get plenty of touches. And I can't wait to be able to see how this one plays out here this Thursday evening. Dark Passenger in the building. What's good? Get all my screen set up here. So we'll be shooting for 100 likes, 100 on the Dono train, and 5 to 15 subs. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. Sammy in the building. How are you? But it really is going to come down to the skill position players. Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb. George Pickens has been a great addition, obviously, with the Dallas Cowboys from his previous team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then Jared Goff in the offense. It may not be as electric since Ben Johnson is no longer calling plays for Detroit, calling plays for the Bears, but you still have weapons like Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. All right, baby, let's go. Kickoff is going to happen here in just a moment, and we got a global broadcast here on Prime. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that Dono train, and 5 to 15 subs. And I feel like this one is going to be entertaining, like the few games the Dallas Cowboys have played recently. We know that they ended up matching up with the Chiefs. I thought that was a very evenly matched, game, and I figured that Dallas would have a very good chance on winning that one. Now, if Dallas was at home, this would be a more interesting matchup. We know Detroit can win at home, but again, if Dallas was at home, a little bit more intriguing, considering, they're at 6-5-1 compared to the Lions 7-5. Both of these teams could make the playoffs. Both of these teams could miss the playoffs. But I'm definitely hoping for both teams to get hot at the right time. And the Cowboys have already won 3 in a row from that Quinnen Williams addition, as well as George Pickens starting to ball out. And Definitely want to be able to see an offensive powerhouse. Even though I am a defensive-oriented fan, it is nice to be able to see games that end up, being like 38-35 once in a while. I'm not going to necessarily, dive in and say, hey, I want a defensive matchup through and through. But again, who wants to watch a game that's 10-7 as a final? Not even me. So here we go with the kickoff. And let's see what the Lions can get here off the first play. And a good return there past the 35-yard line. I like that, baby. And let me get everything adjusted here. Aubrey there with a 59-yard kick. And Jacob Sailors with a 30-yard return. First down and 10, Goff, and a little check down there going to his, security blanket since Sam Darnold. We've seen Sam Darnold and a few of these other quarterbacks, rely on guys like JSN. And the same thing is going to go for Jared Goff and the Goffense with Amon-Ra St. Brown. When he ended up going down on the first play of the game on Thanksgiving, it definitely ruined their chances to be able to compete late in the game. But he gets going with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Nice 7-yard pass. And we definitely have seen some really good quarterback wide receiver connections this season. And hopefully Amon-Ra can stay healthy the rest of the season. Second down and 3. Man in motion. Play action fake, pump fake, and he throws into the turf. And we will see if that ends up being intentional grounding or not. I don't think it will be. Third down and 3 for Jared Goff and the Goffense. Marine Bean in the building. How are you? And normally I'm not, going, out of my way to be able to watch the Cowboys play, but they have looked good within the last, few weeks, especially with their 3 wins, and they're starting to kind of put it together after, having a kind of ho-hum start of 3-5, now 6-5 with 3 wins in a row. Definitely in the playoff chase. Same thing goes with the Lions. Shotgun set, little screen pass. And there is Jahmyr Gibbs slashing, spinning, and finding a way to get that first down. First down, Lions, one pride. I see you. Move the chains. Big first down there for Jared Goff going to his guy, Jahmyr Gibbs. And again, it's nice to be able to have a 1-2 combo of Gibbs and Montgomery. 19-yard run there by Gibbs. And again, the closest thing to Jahmyr Gibbs might be Bucky Irving. And they definitely can juke, better than most running backs that are in the league. I'm happy that Bucky is back, but Jahmyr Gibbs is in a category of all his own. Little play action, check down, going back to Gibbs again. Look at that pivot and cut. Wow, he is incredible. For a guy that is a smaller back, he definitely has a lot more power than most guys his size. He is obviously more of a halfback, tailback, but at times will play like a power back. And again, can bounce off guys, has great moves, spin moves, jukes, and dekes. And again, I see you. 26-yard pass there from Goff to Gibbs. Hooker and Williams with the tackle after bouncing off 2 or 3 defenders there of the Cowboys. And again, in the open field, there's not very many running backs that are better than Jahmyr Gibbs since he's come into the NFL. Facts. Man in motion. And no Sam Laporta, so they're not going to be able to have that check down, option, but they will be other options that he'll be able to go to, just like right there. Yeah, unfortunate Brock Wright not available. Cuba in the building. What's good? 4-yard pass there from Goff to Ross Dwelly. Stewart with the tackle. Second down and 6 at the Dallas 8, and it just feels like, in just a moment or two, the Lions are going to punch it in for 6, and then hopefully we get the same with Dak and the Dallas offense when they get the ball. Goff, hands off, and finally Gibbs goes down, and good defense there by Dallas. As Araku, the rookie, I see you. Third down and 8. After that loss of 2 by Jahmyr Gibbs. Third down and 8 at the Dallas 10. 90 subs away from 23,400. We're going in the right direction. Thursday night football, Cowboys and Lions. Goff getting chased. Uh-oh. It's 12 noon. You know what time it is. Time for a sack lunch. Yum, 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 yum. And that's going to be the thing that keeps Dallas in the game. Besides Dak Prescott getting some positive yardage with Javonte Williams on the ground, Pickens and CeeDee Lamb at wide receiver. And again, you're going to need those guys to step up early and often, but you're also going to need the defense of guys like James Houston. And again, great job there. Quentin Williams has been great. James Houston has been battling some injuries, and a nice sack lunch. Loss of 10 and a touchdown now is going to turn into a field goal attempt. Great job by the Cowboys. 38-yard attempt, kick is up, right down the middle, and it is good. And again, that's what's going to keep the Cowboys in this game when you can end up, holding Detroit to field goals rather than touchdowns. Same thing goes for the Lion defense. They're going to try to hold Dak to field goals, not touchdowns. But I'm really hoping that we do get like a 38-35 kind of score, and we're already on our way. 3-0 Detroit. Let's go, baby. Can't wait to be able to see what Dak does on this drive here. 3-0 Lions. Goff, I see you. Jahmyr Gibbs, I see you. David Montgomery, we haven't seen you yet, but I can't wait to see what you bring to the table. And Amon-Ra St. Brown. But now it's time for the Cowboys and Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and a guy that obviously is kind of a me-first player, not only from Pittsburgh, but in his college days. But it looks like he finally found a good home where he can get the ball enough. And again, George, no one ever really questioned the athleticism. It was always the maturity. And again, we've been able to see some amazing catches out of, George Pickens. And again, it's been able to take their offense to another level. And again, just like the addition of Quentin Williams on the defensive side, you could tell there were still a few pieces that Cowboys needed to add to offense and defense to make it roll a little bit smoother. And again, the addition of Pickens with Dak is great, and CeeDee Lamb, especially if CeeDee ends up having a minor injury, Pickens can be the one temporarily. And then obviously, we've seen Houston get the sack lunch early, but again, Quentin Williams has been great. And again, sometimes when you have teams like the Jets that want to dump their talent, whether it be Sauce Gardner to the Colts, or Quentin Williams to the Cowboys, again, that is a nice addition to be able to have, to be able to surround the rest of the Cowboy D with someone that is a true hustler to the game. Let's go. .46 left in the first quarter. Global broadcast here on Prime. 3-0 Lions. Let's go. And I'm a defensive fan first, but again, when we get matchups like this, I really do look forward to it, and again, we've had a lot of underwhelming games, during prime time. As of late, they've been getting a little bit better. Feels like they were really good at the beginning of the year. And then around October, November, it took a little bit of a dip. But I'm hoping as we get into December and January, they really are going to ramp up. And again, everyone is jockeying for playoff position as well as positions within their own divisions. And again, hopefully this will end up going down to the whoever has the ball last type of game. Lions with the kickoff. And nice job by Turpin and getting to around the 32 or the 33-yard line. And here we go. Dak Prescott, winner of the last 3 games in a row. And again, a guy that is super underrated and underappreciated just because he's on the Cowboys. People want to hate. But I like Dak a lot. And again, I got, my quarterback for the future in Baker Mayfield. But if I didn't, would I take Dak as one of my, top 5 or top 10 options? Yeah, absolutely I would. 27-yard return there by Kevontae Turpin by the kick by Jake Bates. And let's see what we got here on first down. Handoff up the middle. And Javonte Williams with a short gain. And they're going to definitely want to try to get these to 3rd and short rather than 3rd and long for Dak on the road. They're only 2-4 on the road, but again, they have been playing much better ball as of late, winners of the last 3 in a row. The Cowboys could end up being a playoff team, just like the Detroit Lions. 4-yard gain there. Dak with the little play action. There we go, George. First down, Cowboys. Prescott to Pickens, baby. Move the chains. It looks like we got a Lion down. And the individual that tried to tackle Pickens is the one that ended up taking the damage. And hopefully that's not Brian Branch. Reeder and Branch were in there. And I know, the Cowboys and the Lions both have had some significant injuries. And it looks like Harper was injured on the play. Thomas Harper, not Branch. So that's a sigh of relief. But still, they're very thin at that position. And looks like Harper just took a little bit of the grunt of that play to George Pickens. Got him right in the hip. Harper's still down on the field. A couple of the training staff and medical staff there. Hopefully he's okay. 10:15, going to 10:03 left in the first quarter. First down and 10 for the Dallas Cowboys. Hopefully Harper is going to be all right, but definitely, kind of stuttering the momentum, so to speak. And he's finally walking off. See if he ends up going into the medical tent for a concussion test. I'm not sure if he'll be back, but we will find out, obviously, as we go further on in this game. But, based on how he's moving and being, held by the trainers, wouldn't shock me if he's out for the rest of the game. Now Avonte Maddox comes in. First down and 10 at the Dallas 47. After that nice pass of 11 yards from Prescott to Pickens. First down and 10, play action. And a little check down. And Javonte Williams tries to avoid the tackle, but the bear hug is in place. And a nice tackle there by Barnes, not letting go. And a good form tackle there by Detroit, which is something, they're not known to do, throughout all quarters throughout the game. Loss of 5 after that tackle by Barnes. Jude in the building. How are you? Good matchup here on Thursday night between the Cowboys and the Lions if you like offense. And there's enough defensive players on both teams where their defenses might not be great, but they will make plays, time to time in this game. Dak, right in the middle of the field. Beautiful throw. First down, Cowboys. Move the chains. And Ferguson making big plays. And obviously, we know Dallas has had a nice tradition of tight ends. Dalton Schultz now on the Texans, as well as Witten and a few others from back in the day. Floater, one-on-one, almost intercepted, incomplete. No flags there. Flanoy there, the deep target. Second down and 10 at the Detroit 40. Yeah, hopefully, Kraken are still playing, pretty good hockey. Blazers are kind of hitting a wall and going in the wrong direction, even though they did get a win yesterday against the Cavs, which was huge on the road. But, hopefully both teams will be able to make the playoffs this year. Dak. And a handoff up the middle to Javonte Williams. Doesn't go for very much, if any. And it looks like they give him a yard, even though it looked like no gain. Third down and 9 at the Detroit 39. .825 and counting here in the first quarter. Shotgun set, 3 wide receiver set here for Dak and the Cowboys. Dak steps up in the pocket, hits a laser, and almost intercepted, throws to George Pickens in double coverage, and you got to be careful throwing into double coverage, to Pickens or CeeDee Lamb. Good defense there by the Lions, and that is going to turn into a punt. Yeah, and our bench is kind of thin as well. So again, we have quite a few guys that have been out this year, and we're incredibly young. And when you're young and then you have a thin bench and then starters get hurt, yeah, it definitely will cause an impact on what you do throughout the season. And they're going to go for a long field goal, 57-yarder. Kick is up by Aubrey. He's got the leg, and it is good. Wow. Okay. Long field goal. Nice job there by Aubrey. And we know Aubrey does have the leg. And, again, when you got a guy that you can feel confident kicking 50 to 60, sometimes you can roll the dice with a long 50-yard field goal. And a nice job by Aubrey. Instead of punting and possibly, playing the field position game, they tie this game up 3-3 early. Let's go. Chief in the building. What's good? Yeah, I'm ready. I mean, obviously it's like signing period, and we're looking at all the, people that will be coming in, to the Ducks and all of our favorite college football teams the last few days. But again, I don't really like the extended time off. Again, Big Ten championship is on Saturday, between Ohio State and Indiana. So I'll be doing that on the stream on Saturday evening. But again, I don't really like having, 2-3 weeks off. But again, if we can get healthy and just find some rhythm, as we go through, and hopefully we don't end up having a first round bye. I really want the Ducks to be a 5 seed, not a 4. It definitely will not help us if we're in the bye as a 4. So I don't mind being a 5 and being kind of like Ohio State last year, kind of on the outside looking in to the Big Ten championship and on the outside looking in the playoff. And again, if you can end up being one of the better teams that's not in the first 4, and then you can get hot and healthy at the right time, depending on matchups, you can end up, potentially going all the way. And hopefully we can kind of follow in the Buckeyes' footsteps of last year. And hopefully the Ducks can, at least have a chance to go on a deep run. Not sure if they are good enough, to beat the Buckeyes or the Hoosiers this year. But again, if we play a clean 4-quarter game, I think we can. But that's the real question. Can we play a full 4-quarter game? The defense is much better for the Ducks this year compared to last year. We haven't played with our top 3 wide receivers for, pretty much the whole year for one of them. And then the other 2 probably for half of the season. But we're very deep at running back, got a great quarterback, got the best tight end in the country in Kenyon Sadiq. Offensive line has been beat up. Obviously, defense has had some minor injuries here and there, but nothing really significant. And, we'll see what happens. But I'm really looking forward to the college football playoff as well as the NFL playoffs as well. Chief in the building. What's good? So, again, with that, depending on what you're watching it on, you get a faster stream. Obviously, if you have it connected, to a Wi-Fi rather than just, your phone data. I've noticed that. And I've also noticed that if you end up getting it through your phone rather than watching it on a computer or an app on your TV, on your phone will be faster. So again, I think they end up getting the signal, maybe, somewhere different than where they get the other one. So, depending on if you're having issues with that, just a heads up. I usually try to watch it on multiple platforms. That way I can see, what's going to be best for me while I'm streaming. So good return there by the Lions. TJ in the building. What's good? Good game so far, 3-3, great offense, for both teams. And, I'll be honest, I've never really been a Cowboy guy. Growing up, I was more of a, Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, Ronnie Lott kind of guy, even though I didn't claim the Niners as my team as a young kid. I liked watching that, particular offense. But again, I respected Aikman and Emmitt Smith and Michael Irvin. And when Dion was there, obviously I liked him more on the 49ers in 94 rather than the Cowboys in 95. But I can say this might be like the first time in a long time that I actually get excited to watch the Cowboys play. And I think it's probably because they're not talking about the Cowboys going to the Super Bowl like they usually do, on some of these talk shows and whatnot, that, try to spit out this gibberish and garbage that that isn't true. It's just something that they want to be able to have people argue about. And obviously started off a little slow, 3-5, 3-5-1, but they won 3 in a row. And I really like the way that the Cowboys have been playing in the last month and a half. And hopefully they'll be able to continue that. Same thing with the Lions. Goff steps up in the pocket and decides to throw it into the turf and complete, even though the Cowboys are picking it up. TJ in the building. What's good? Britt in the building. How are you? 8:01 to 7:18, and Goff obviously feels the pressure, and has to, just have that football take a nosedive into the turf. But there's nothing to really look at there. Both the throws have been, just to try to get an incomplete pass. So 3rd down and 8 here for Jared Goff and the Goffense. Mike in the building. What's good? Shotgun set on 3rd down and 8. Goff almost intercepted. Wide receiver falls down. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Bland, ends up tripping over his legs as well and kind of goes down to the turf. Could have been a big play. And that's going to turn into 4th down and 8. And again, for a game that, people thought, it's going to be all offense, and again, hopefully we get a good chunk of it where we could possibly get a game into the 30s. But again, both teams have enough defensive players where you could end up getting, a fumble or a pick six or, something special. The defenses aren't the greatest, but they do have a few players that can play in spurts in this matchup. Lions with the punt. We got a flag on the play. And Turpin can't decide if he called fair catch or not. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed the like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train, and 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it. Bye-bye. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. But both offenses are fun to watch, regardless if you're a Cowboy fan or a Lion fan. They're both in the playoff hunt. And, based on how the Eagles have been playing, it gives a little bit of wiggle room for Dallas. And obviously with the Bears and the Packers, the Lions are feeling the heat. They know that they're better than the Vikings in the division, but that's about it. So again, Detroit really needs to come up with a victory here. Same thing for Dallas to be able to keep pace with the teams in the division themselves, as well as the NFC. And let's take a quick look here on the hold. Just doesn't let go. And obviously with the Lions, not having Ben Johnson, they're not able to convert on 4th down anymore. And it doesn't really feel like they have the same type of championship caliber team as they did last year and maybe the year before. Offensive holding there on that 4-yard penalty. I see you, Bridges. 1st down and 10. Cowboys are backed up into their own end zone. Dak hands it up. And a short gain there. Javonte Williams. And again, Javonte Williams really isn't good enough at running back for the Cowboys. You had Zeke, you had Tony Pollard, but you need somebody, better, and hopefully at some point they'll be able to find, a back that will suit their system. And again, the running back room has been very, very thin for Dallas the last few years. Two-yard gain there by Javonte Williams, even though Rico Dowdle, former Cowboy, is having a good year with the Panthers. But sometimes a change of scenery will do that. Little short, quick slant there to Pickens. And now we got 3rd down and long. 6 minutes left here in the first quarter. 3-yard pass by Prescott to Pickens. Robertson with the tackle. Third down and 5 at the Dallas 10. Shotgun set. Dak, pressure coming. It's 12 noon. You know what time it is. Time for a sack lunch. Yum, 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 yum. And that turns into a safety. Oh, my. Are they going to give him the safety or not? Okay, I was going to say you have to give them the safety, especially if they're that far back. But let's take a look here. I mean, Dak is trying to squat down to prevent, the safety. But, when you get thrown 2 yards into the end zone, Hutchinson and company, there's nowhere that you can go. There we go. And see, this is something that you probably didn't expect that you were going to see. You probably didn't think there was going to be a safety in this game. And again, there's enough defensive players in the game to get fumbles, picks, safeties, maybe even a blocked field goal or a blocked punt. Even though that these two defenses, aren't very, good on a consistent basis, they play in spurts, both of them. And every once in a while, you'll get a little bit of magic here. And the call on the field is a safety, and that should be upheld. Even though Dak tried to squat down, but I'd be shocked if they decide not to call it a safety, but you never know with the refs nowadays. Nice. So for the Value Village, is it a generic Mariner jersey, or is it actually like a player jersey of like an old school player that might be like an obscure player? Because depending on some of those generic ones, you can always get a name stitched in the back if you take it to like a particular shop and whatnot. And they're looking at the call in the field here with the safety. Wow, the entire football was boo. I don't know about that. They said the entire football was outside of the end zone, but again, it's based on when the whistle is blown. So again, if this isn't a fucking safety, then I don't know what the hell is. So again, I don't know. I don't know about that. I think that's one of those calls you give them the safety. I mean, how often do we even get a guy to tackle a guy in the end zone, right? Most of the time they get rid of the ball before that. I don't know about that call. I think that if it's going to be like a very marginal, close call, give them the safety. Make the game fun, It's the NFL. We don't want it to be the no fun league. Golly. Cowboys dodge a bullet there, but they're in the back of the end zone. And we'll see if we get a blocked punt here by the Lions. And Dallas gets it off. That's a pretty good punt there, all the way back into the 38-yard line. And a nice spin move. And now Detroit is in good position to be able to march the field here with a couple first downs for potentially points. Mariners on the front, 29 on the back. Nice. Well, Cal Raleigh. 3 is a good number. $5:24 left in the first quarter. 3-3 Cowboys and Lions. Yeah. Well, that one was really physical. I mean, obviously that was a legal hit, and things got definitely chippy, and it definitely will give, quarterbacks that are young like Jackson Dart a little bit of a reminder why they tell you to get down, because again, there's going to be, safeties and linebackers that are going to be running full speed, full steam ahead, from the other side of the field. And if they catch up and hit you, you're going flying, and that's exactly what happened. And wasn't a dirty hit. Obviously, when, things are that quick and it's a bang, bang play, obviously the Giants offensive line, took a little, took that to heart a little bit, but, after replays, it was clean, but, I miss the good old days from, the 80s and 90s, but obviously with all the concerns with CTE and everything else and injuries, I get it. But, we want this to be a fun league to watch, not the no fun league. And again, the physicality will come out. And, again, that's one of the reasons why the Patriots, might end up being the most well-rounded team in the AFC. I don't really see a lot of other teams that are that good on offense, defense, and special teams. The Broncos are good at defense, and they're good with Bo Nix in the fourth quarter, but they need to be better in the first 3 quarters, right? And then the Buffalo Bills have Allen and Cook, but you can't really rely on their defense. They beat you by scoring more points
plain and simple. If they get anything out of the defense for the Bills, it's almost like a miracle, right? So, those kind of seem like the cream of the crop. And then you got the Colts and the Jags and the Texans battling it out with the Chiefs and the Chargers, and then you got the weakest division in football with the AFC North, with the Steelers and the Ravens and the Bengals. And honestly, I would love for the Bengals to, win out and win the division. Obviously with the Steelers and Ravens, more than likely it'll be one of them, but I'm not really sure if anybody in the AFC North could win a playoff game. And then on the flip side, with the NFC, the Cowboys and the Buccaneers and the Panthers might have shitty records at this point, but I feel that, they can win games. It just depends on, the opponents and how, things break down. And obviously you got the Bears and the Packers and the Lions, jockeying for position. You got 3 9-win teams in the NFC West and the Niners, Rams, and Seahawks. And then now you have the Eagles in the East, and then the Cowboys are on the outside looking in. So again, it's going to be very exciting to see how it all plays out in the NFL playoffs as we make it to the Super Bowl. First down and 10, Goff going to a little check down, Jahmyr Gibbs. And it takes 2 Dallas Cowboys to bring him down. And hopefully we get in the end zone here sooner than later. Showtime in the building. What's good? You will get some TDs in this game. There's no doubt about that. It's almost guaranteed you're going to get in with Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, either both or at least one of them. And then it's almost a guarantee you're going to get in with Gibbs or Montgomery or both. And then there's a chance, for Amon-Ra or one of the other wide receivers or tight ends to possibly get in. And again, defenses have played pretty good up to this point with all things considered. Go to the sideline. Let's see where they end up giving them. First down, Lions. Move the chains. Yeah, the Chris Henry Jr. would be huge. Obviously, the Buckeye target, could end up flipping, and unless everything has already gone through. I mean, obviously we know what the Buckeyes, there was a verbal, but there was no paperwork that was sent in. So, but it kind of felt like the Ducks were going to get them. Flag on the play. It's kind of cool that we have, some newer teams in the mix this year instead of just the same teams over and over and over. But obviously, if you're a Chief fan or a Raven fan, you wish you were better. The Bills are still, relevant, and they're at the top, and, with the Broncos and the Patriots. But, defense wins games, defense wins championships. So it wouldn't really be shocking, if it was the Patriots or the Broncos in the Super Bowl for the AFC. And the NFC, I mean, the Rams are great. Seahawks are great. Niners are still kind of hanging around. Obviously, we know the NFC South is the weakest division in the NFC with the Bucks and the Panthers. There's no doubt about that. Eagles aren't really playing great ball, but they can turn it on, possibly, as we get into later December, January. But they're still not the same team with that injured offensive line. And, Jalen and Saquon don't really look the same. Cowboys are, getting hot at the right time here in December. And then obviously you got a logjam in the North, with obviously the Bears. Easy schedule, but they beat the Eagles, so they're going to be able to prove that they belong. Packers, more times than not are on. And then you got the Lions kind of on the back end, on the outside looking in, but trying to keep pace with the Packers and Bears. So going to be very, very exciting to see how it all plays out. And there are definitely going to be a few teams that should deserve to be in the playoffs that will barely miss it. Nice pass there. St. Brown. First down, Lions. Beautiful pass there by Jared Goff to Amon-Ra St. Brown. And it definitely shows you if you have the right coach, and the right coordinators, and you have everyone believing in, the philosophy and the system, sometimes you can end up being 1 year early, possibly like the Patriots and the Bears, where, you could probably see, some potential there, but I don't think anyone anticipated both of those teams being this good at this point of the season. Obviously, Bears had a very easy schedule. The Patriots are just the real deal. Physicality, run the ball, play good defense. That's how you win games. And diving into the end zone, touchdown, Lions. Oh, they don't give it to him. Just short of the marker. And I like that Nice jet sweep there, especially with someone like Williams. Jamison Williams got, great speed. And he steps out of bounds there about at the 1.5. I don't know what it is about, last name Williams, but it seems like we always get a lot of fast receivers that are deep threats, just like Kyle Williams as well. 2nd and goal, and off up the middle. Jahmyr Gibbs is slippery as they come. Touchdown, Lions. Nice job there by Jahmyr Gibbs. And again, the only player that's like Jahmyr Gibbs might be the Buccaneers' Bucky Irving. But even as a Bucs fan, I can admit, Bucky is great. And we're a different team with him. But Jahmyr Gibbs is on another level. And I hope one day, Bucky can stay healthy enough and catch up to Jahmyr Gibbs. But freakish athlete from Alabama, Roll Tide. And again, the perfect draft pick to pair with David Montgomery. Beautiful. Nice touchdown there by Detroit. Love me some Gibbs. It's like you get the power and the speed. Montgomery is the power back. Gibbs is the speed back. But Gibbs has a lot more power in his game than people tend to assume until you see him, obviously, face to face. Extra point is up and good. There we go. 10-3 Cowboys. Let's see if Dak can respond to make this a back and forth game. Henderson is good. I don't know if I would put him in the Gibbs category with Bucky, though, based on his body size. He's more, of a bigger back. Travion Henderson is more like a David Montgomery type of back, but has got the speed, to kind of take the hits and go. For Gibbs and Bucky, they're more small, and they give you that burst of speed and whatnot. But again, one thing about Henderson that I do like is that, as a rookie, based off his vision, I think that he is a better running back than Ramondre Stevenson. Now, we know Ramondre Stevenson has been a pretty good back, a little injury prone, but I feel with his age and everything else, if it was me and I was running the team with, Josh McDaniels, I would make Henderson the 1 and then Ramondre Stevenson the RB2, the change of pace back. I think you get a little bit more out of that offense and a little bit more breathing room for Drake May. But again, Ramondre is one of those guys that runs so physical that it's almost inevitable he's going to get hurt again. So Henderson will end up taking over the role, but it's kind of like Rachaad White and Bucky Irving. A couple years back, obviously they had Rachaad White as the 1, but I always thought, even though Bucky was small, it would kind of make sense to go with the guy that has the better vision and the better awareness, the better football IQ. And they made the move, but what happened? Bucky ended up getting hurt. I haven't had him since week 3. Just came back, helped us beat the Cardinals. But again, sometimes when you have those, shorter backs that have the speed and the vision, can they run through the tackles? Yeah, but can they also catch screen passes and take that to the house? And the answer is yes, with those smaller backs with like Gibbs and Bucky Irving as well. (10-3) Lions lead. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it, baby. Nice job there by Jared Goff and the Goff-fence there with Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, and a little Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now it's time for Dak Prescott to get the ball to CeeDee Lamb. We haven't really seen a whole lot of him. Saw a little bit of George Pickens. And again, if they had a better running back than Javonte Williams, imagine if they had David Montgomery on the Cowboys, how much more of a difference that would make. Obviously having the 1-2 punch of Gibbs and Montgomery is great for the Lions, but the offensive line isn't the same. And not having Ben Johnson there, obviously, is a huge downgrade to the play calling there for Dan Campbell. Vikings, Chargers, Commanders, and Giants. Dallas could win all of those games and get into the playoffs. Lions got Rams, Steelers, Vikings, Bears. Rams and Bears will be tough, but Steelers and Vikings should be pretty easy. Maybe Steelers could give them a little bit of a challenge, but we'll find out. Yeah, but the Patriots have their own style, though. They like that physicality, run the football, play good defense, and again, they're good on all 3 phases of the game. And, I feel like they run their, squad kind of like an old school team would. And again, that might be the reason why they end up getting to the Super Bowl over the Broncos and the other teams in the AFC, based on how flexible they are and how much depth that they have at OD and special teams. It's pretty remarkable to see here in 2025 after, going back to back with only 4 wins and, sitting where they're at now. Handoff up the middle. And really the weakness of their team is definitely the running back position for the Dallas Cowboys. We got about 2 minutes to go here in the first quarter. 10-3 Lions. And it shows you, if you have the right coach, it makes all the difference. I mean, imagine if New England had their old coach still. We're not even talking about Drake May today, because they're probably at a similar record they've had the last couple of years. So, you got a good, play caller with the defense with Vrabel. McDaniels does McDaniel things. We know he's one of the best play callers in the game. And it'll be very interesting to see the matchups as we get further into the season. 2-yard run there by Javonte Williams turns into a 4-yard pass from Prescott to Flornay. 4 yards. Rodriguez and Campbell. First down. Cowboys. Move the chains. And it's probably nice to feel like you're not going to be getting blown out anymore, in the previous couple years. Like, you feel like you can beat anybody, no matter if it's AFC or NFC. And again, it's cool to be able to see the team that has an identity now, post Brady, post Belichick. And we didn't know how long it would take for them to have an identity, maybe 10 or 20 years. And, it took about 4 or 5 years to kind of find the right people and the right players. But, I always like being able to see guys pan out rather than, coaches fail the quarterbacks and then we get another B word, another bust label on another QB. End of the first quarter, and it was a good one. 10-3 Lions. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it. Bang, bang. All right, we're at 20 likes, 80 to go. Let's go, baby. Bates with a 38-yard field goal to get the game going. 8 plays, 44 yards, 4 minutes and 14-second drive. 3-0 Lions, which could have been a touchdown early on, but you got to give Dallas's defense some credit there. Obviously, Houston with the big sack lunch, and that prevented the touchdown. Then he had Aubrey, where it was 4th down, and they could have just punted, but they went for a 57-yard field goal, a long one, and it was good, and we know Aubrey's got the leg. 3-3 Lions and Cowboys. And then Jahmyr Gibbs doing Jahmyr Gibbs things. 1-yard rush, Bates with the kick, 6 plays, 42 yards, 3 minutes and 10 seconds, 10-3 Lions. And we probably should have had a safety in there as well, but, the NFL, you never know what you're going to get with the play calls with these refs. All right, here we go. Second quarter, 2nd down and 7 at the Dallas 46. Shotgun set. Lions bringing blitz. And a quick throw to the outside. And you got 4 Detroit Lions there. Minimal gain. And Dak definitely has to be able to, get the ball to CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, but you want to make sure you're getting it to Ferg at tight end as well. You cannot let him, go a majority of the game with minimal touches. 3rd down and 6 at the Dallas 47 towards the sideline. There's CD. There you go. There we go. 1st down, Cowboys. And CeeDee Lamb, probably the most likable player, on the Cowboys offensively or defensively. Could play on any team in the NFL. And obviously when he's not injured, definitely plays as he is one of the top 5 or top 10 wide receivers in the game. Nice connection there from Dak to CeeDee Lamb. And again, they're going to have to, find Ferg, CeeDee Lamb, and a nice jet sweep there to Turpin. Obviously a smaller football player that definitely has the speed. Not the same kind of speed as like Jamison Williams with a little bit more upper body strength. Turpin goes down a little bit quicker, as you can see. 4-yard run there off the jet sweep. Maddox with the tackle. 2nd down and 6 at the Detroit 33. 10-3 Lion lead. Second down and 6 at the Detroit 33. Dak under center. Handoff. And Javonte Williams. And they got to be a little bit more creative than just running halfback dives and halfback counters with Javonte Williams. It's not like they really had good running game with Pollard and Zeke, as of late. And then obviously Rico Dowdle, didn't really give you a whole lot. And a part of that obviously is the offensive line for the Cowboys not being the greatest, but got to be a little bit more creative with the play calls there. But Rico obviously has stepped up for the Panthers, and, good for him. Branch and Campbell in there with the tackle. 3rd down and 3, halfback toss. There we go. Bounce it to the outside, runs into his own man. But there you go. You get the 1st down. That's what I'm talking about. Be a little bit more creative. You can only run the dive and the counter so many times before the other team kind of figures it out. And a nice job there by Javonte Williams. 1st down, Cowboys, and they got plenty of blocking there downfield. And obviously you got one of the offensive linemen to pull, and that was a great job by 78. Even though he runs into the back of 78, great job. 1st down, Cowboys, move the chains. Dak under center, play action bootleg, rolling to his left. And wow, how did he catch that? Span forward with the catch. Tried to thread that needle in between 2 Lion defenders. Good throw by Dak. 8-yard pass from Prescott to Brevin Span Ford. Maddox with the tackle. 2nd down and 2 at the Detroit 18. Let him know, TJ. 2nd down and 2. 2nd down and 3. Shotgun set. Handoff up the middle. And a minimal gain there by Davis. All right, Malik. Third down and short. 3rd down and 1. You could always run a QB sneak with, Dak Prescott if needed. And that's what they do. 1st down, Cowboys. Man, I should be an OC. There we go. That's what I would have done if I was calling plays. Dak isn't the guy that's going to do it often, but again, situational football, know your players. And that was a good call. 1st down, Cowboys. Move the chains. Agreed. And they don't need to have someone, push him from behind. He's got enough strength to get it himself. 1st down and 10. Man in motion, CeeDee Lamb. Play action. And a little bootleg rolling to his right. And incomplete. Flournoy, the intended receiver. I think if you watch football long enough, and again, I've been watching since the mid 80s, and you really pay attention to, formations. And again, a lot of people are only watching, the ball and where it goes. For me, I'm watching formations. I'm watching O-line, D-line, how guys move in the different formations. So it definitely gives you a different perspective, on football. 2nd down and 10 at the Detroit 15. Detroit bring in blitz, and they go for the screen pass, and it's dropped incomplete. And they're going to have to be able to have some kind of audible, where if the blitz ends up coming, where they can run like a little hitch route, or something very simple for Pickens to be able to put his hands up, so that way Dak has a target with either CD or Pickens or Ferg in that situation. You don't really want to go to your running back there because it's not like Javonte Williams has got a whole lot of speed, kind of a slow back. 3rd down and 10 at the Detroit 15. Detroit trying to hold to a field goal. Dallas trying to punch it in with Ferg, CD, or George Pickens. Shotgun set, 3rd down and 10. Pressure off the edge, and it's 12 noon. You know what time it is. Time for a sack lunch. Yum, 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 yum. And a big sack lunch. Muhammad. Loss of 9. And again, you got to be better there. And again, pressure off the edge. Muhammad on one side. And then you got, Hutch on the other. And again, if you only have a second to make a read, you're probably going to get sacked. Field goal attempt here by Aubrey. Chip shot. Kick is up. And wow, he almost missed it. And it kind of felt like one of those, shots in pool where if you go as hard as you possibly can, right, you miss it, right? So he almost like he had to do it with just a little bit of touch, like when you see in golf and, in certain sports where, you're kicking it, but you're kicking it kind of softly, just hoping that it stays within the crossbar. And if he would have given that full strength, I think that would have went wide right. So nice touch kick by Aubrey there on the right hash, 10-6 Detroit. Yes, left tackle was asleep. Agreed. I mean, it's one thing to think that Hutch is going to come in and make a sack lunch, but you're probably not game planning for Muhammad to do what Hutch normally does on the regular. So, but again, a good game so far, 10-6 Lions. And again, we are going to get more touchdowns, in this game. 9:23 left in the second quarter. And again, hopefully we'll end up getting some magic by Detroit on this next drive. And again, if you're the Cowboys, field goals are fine, in the first half, but at some point, you're going to have to try to get it in the end zone, whether it be with Dak's legs, like on an RPO to kind of fool them. Javonte Williams, if you're close enough, if you can get to the goal line, if you actually get the ball within, the 5-yard line and in, you can go with Javonte Williams in that regard. Unless you end up going with Davis or one of the others. But again, we need to be able to see CD Lamb. We need to see Ferg. And we also need to see a little bit more of George Pickens. And we'll see if they end up testing the secondary and going deep to try to draw the PI or to get that big play. Because we know Pickens and CD Lamb, one-on-one and one-on-two, they are two of the better one-on-one, one-on-two receivers in the league. So, even in double coverage, CD and George can make plays. But again, you got to be kind of careful on when you decide to thread the needle. Otherwise, the Lions will pick it off. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. Broncos and Chiefs at Christmas. I'll be doing that game. And we're going to have, I think, tomorrow off. And then on Saturday, we'll do the Big Ten Championship between number 1 Ohio State, number 2 Indiana Hoosiers. Really looking forward to seeing the NFL talent, on both of those teams. Mendoza could end up going number 1, in the draft. It's possible, even though the team that drafts him probably needs a hell of a lot more than just that. But, It'll be very interesting to see how Sayan and Mendoza go at each other, as well as the defenses. Looking really forward to that. And then obviously the regular Monday night football schedule after that. It's a slapper, you know it. And Aubrey's 63-yard kick gets returned by Jacob Saylor's 27 yards, spanned forward with the tackle. First down and 10 at the Detroit 29. Man in motion, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Goff, play action. Good protection. Goff looking, and decides just to throw it away in front of Amon-Ra St. Brown. Incomplete. And you haven't really seen Goff get into a good rhythm yet, besides from him to Gibbs, kind of in the check down game. You can go to Jamison Williams on jet sweeps and go routes, and you can make big plays there. No Sam Laporta, so obviously that's going to take a hit. And I would like to see David Montgomery touch the ball at some point. I feel like the offense is better when they have Montgomery and Gibbs in the game at the same time. It definitely makes you wonder, where is the ball going to go? But you don't really see them run I formation that often. You can always run Gibbs in the slot as well. And that might be false start on the Lion O-line. Self-inflicted wound there. Second down. Frazier, the rookie, with the false start. Miles Frazier, you got to be better. Can't have those self-inflicted wounds, the guard for the Lions. Second down and 15 at the Detroit 24. Shotgun set on second down and 15. Goff, good rhythm. Jahmyr Gibbs, spin move. And gosh, what a slippery player. Nice job by Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, he's kind of like a one-man band. He's one of those guys that single-handedly can win a game for you. And there's not too many of those guys that are in the NFL, but Gibbs is one of them. One of the best pass catchers out of the backfield in the game. Speed, vision, hands. I mean, you name it, he's got it. Love that type of player. Third down and 2. Goff going towards the sideline, incomplete. And you got Lions fans crying for a penalty. But it doesn't look like they are going to get one. Yeah, looks like there was movement there up front. So again, you're not going to call a safety, but then you're going to miss, plays like that. Makes you kind of wonder, clearly offsides, and, what makes a referee decide to make a call or not make a call, especially when 2 or 3 of them are looking at the same thing, And obviously the Lions are not good at fourth down, but that doesn't mean that they'll continue to keep trying. Yeah, probably the funnest running back to watch in the league. We know Gibbs obviously is up there. Saquon was the best back overall last year, right? And then obviously we know Jonathan Taylor is the best this year. But as far as, excitement, I feel like Gibbs is probably the most exciting, back in the league. And all the boo birds are coming out there for the Lion fans. And we'll see if we get a makeup call at some point or another. Fox punts 42 yards. And Turpin with the fair catch. And that's kind of weird that the Lions wouldn't go for it. They're up 10-6, and that's kind of their aggressive behavior to go for it, whether they're on their 50 or the other 50. But I guess they were too far in their own territory to give the Cowboys a freebie point. Yeah, 54 was offsides. Agreed. .8:21 left in the second quarter. 10-6, Lions lead. And again, you haven't really seen Goff get into a good rhythm yet. A little bit here and there to Amon-Ra. Obviously, Gibbs has been fantastic. Haven't seen David Montgomery at all, and that's kind of a shame. A guy that's so talented that barely gets used in this offense, and maybe that's part of the problem, here in 2025, trying to be able to manage the touches between Gibbs and Montgomery. But we will see if Dak can get into a rhythm with CD and George Pickens, because they definitely need to get on the board. But even if they get another field goal and they make it 10-9, they're definitely in striking distance, to be able to get that touchdown in the second half. All right, here we go. First down and 10. Dak needs to try to get them into the end zone if he can, but even field goal would be great. Floater, wide open. Look at that. Beautiful throw, beautiful catch. Dak to CD Lamb. Move the chains. That was beautiful. Let's go. Nice job by Dak to CD Lamb. And again, you know that George, since he's, joined the team, has been able to get a few more looks, but you never can forget about, your star stud in CD Lamb. Branch with the big hit on Dak, but perfectly placed on a dime. First down, Cowboys. We them boys, move the chains. And Dak avoiding a sack lunch, throw it away. Dak running for his life. Offensive line for the Cowboys definitely has some holes there, as you can see. Yeah, good thing Ferg landed on that. That could have been disaster. Should have looked the other direction and just threw it out of bounds, but everything's coming at you so quick. So, all right, now it'll be second down and 26 at the Dallas 42. Dak, with that bad decision, puts them in a little bit deeper of a hole now after that great catch by CD Lamb. Dak, throw to the sideline to CD, just trying to get a few of those yards back. Third down and long. Yeah, I don't know, Chief. That's a good question. There definitely is a few calls that are a little suspect there. I mean, Detroit could have had a safety. They didn't give it to him. And then, obviously we saw, players offsides. They didn't call it, so it makes you kind of wonder, what makes a ref decide to call a flag for a particular penalty or to look the other way, so to speak. Third down and 21 at the Dallas 47. Dak, go deep. Go deep, Dak. And doesn't have room to go deep, so just goes with a check down to Ferg. And, ball comes out, and the Lions recover. Wow. And again, the last thing that you wanted to have happen is a turnover right there. And again, maybe they were wishing that Dalton Schultz was still on the team rather than Ferguson. Wow. You can't do that, Ferg. And again, a great hit there by Detroit. And pokes that ball out, and then you get a few Lions, having the awareness to jump on that football. And, turnovers like that can cost you the game, and that might cost them the game, especially if Detroit, just goes deep with Jamison Williams on the first play and scores, and they go up 17-6. It's going to be hard to come back. Not impossible for the Cowboys, but a lot harder to come back at that point. Then you're going to need a fumble of your own in the second half to make up for that one. Goff, hands off. And they go with Gibbs. And a short gain towards that sideline. And looks like holding on the offensive line, so self-inflicted wounds for the Lions. And if you're Dallas, you want to hold them to 3 or 0. You don't want them to score a touchdown off your turnover, if possible. And then the best case scenario for Dallas, that you end up getting a turnover, here on Goff, which, could happen. You never know. Offensive holding there by Dan Skipper. First down and 20 at the Detroit 37. First and 20. 3 wide receiver set. And that might be false start on the offensive line again. And where the hell is David Montgomery? Give him the rock. I mean, I love me some Jahmyr Gibbs. Don't get me wrong, but again, David Montgomery is too good of a back to not play. Imagine if he was on the Cowboys, how many more wins David Montgomery would be able to give a team that is desperately lacking a running game. I mean, imagine if David Montgomery was on Denver, or a team like that, how much better that would make their offense. Tesla with the catch. Second down and long. I believe the Cowboys get the ball in the second half. So obviously trying to keep this close will be ideal for them. Second down and 17. Play action. Good protection up front. Goff going deep, wide open. Jamison Williams, first down. Lions, move the chains. Hashtag one pride I see you. What a route by J-Mo. It's like you got to be able to have specialty players and, that do specific things. Goff going deep, 1-on-2, incomplete. And they go for the deep route on J-Mo, but J-Mo's going to be better off when one-on-one coverage, not with the safety over the top. Second down and 10 at the Dallas 35. But it's almost like they're, assuming that it would go to J-Mo. So you have to go to someone else, maybe like Amon Ra. And obviously not having Sam Laporta, on a consistent basis has definitely hurt this team as well. It's not like the same offense like last year with Ben Johnson calling the plays, and you can tell. You can still come up with a few splash plays here and there for Detroit, but it's not as consistent as last year by any means. Shotgun set, trips left. They decide to hand it up the middle. And look who it is, David Montgomery. See ya. And that's why you give him the ball. Touchdown, Lions. He gets the ball for the very first time in the game. What does he do? Score a touchdown. What do you know? Touchdown, Lions. He is too good to not get the ball. And again, he's an RB1, but sometimes gets treated like an RB2 and sometimes doesn't even play that much. And again, great job there. And, he's just too good not to get the ball to. Again, if you could find a way to get 15 carries each, that would be ideal. And obviously that's not something that typically is going to happen. But if you were able to do that, you would get the most out of this offense. 35-yard touchdown run there by David Montgomery. We talk about David Montgomery, and then 2 minutes later, he scores. Extra point is up, and good. All right, Cowboys. They were wishing they had a David Montgomery on their team or a Jahmyr Gibbs, and they have neither. But they do have CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens. They have Ferguson, but after Ferguson's fumble, you may not want to go to him anymore. So now, you're going to have to, test the waters, and you're going to have to go deep, but you're going to have to be kind of cautious on when you go deep. You just can't go deep every single time. Otherwise, that's going to turn into a pick. But, there will be some opportunities for Pickens and CeeDee Lamb at some point. Great job. I love it when, we talk about a player and then they end up scoring, making me look good. So nice job there by David Montgomery. The sports gods are listening. 17-6 Lions, but again, if Dallas can end up getting a field goal or a touchdown, they're right back in it. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it, baby. 90 subs to go to 23,400. Let's get it. Nice job there by David Montgomery. Get him the ball. Lions with the early lead, but there's still time for Dak, CD, and George Pickens. But again, Dallas's defense, they're going to have to come up with a big play, either on defense or special teams. They're going to need a fumble. They're going to need a pick, a fumble for a touchdown, a pick six, a blocked punt, a blocked field goal. They're going to need something extra, to make this game close. If they get that extra, big play, then it may go down to, whoever has the ball last. But if they don't get the big play, then it is possible that Detroit might run away from this. But again, when you're going against Gibbs and Montgomery, that's a hard task, even if you have an elite D-line. Even with elite D tackles, they could still find ways to get yards. So, I like Houston. I like Quinnen Williams. Obviously they don't have Micah Parsons anymore, who's on Green Bay. But, if Dallas was at home, then this game would be a little bit more interesting, because, again, obviously we know, Detroit at home after a loss, they usually get the dub right after that. Good return there, but we have a flag on the play. That might be holding or some kind of illegal chop block or something. Let's see what we get here. Looks like that's on Dallas. Holding on the receiving team. Self-inflicted wounds. And again, Dallas doesn't have a very capable running back in Javonte Williams. Neither was Tony Pollard or Zeke for the last couple of years. And Rico Dowdle went to the Panthers and ended up showing that he can be a good back. But, they definitely need better O-line and a better running back, to be able to get the most out of this offense. Ten-yard penalty. Man in motion, Dak on first down and 10. Plenty of time there. Little screen. And short gain there by Javonte Williams. And I feel like Javonte Williams is like a name, but that's not really who you want as your starter. Like if you have a player like that as an RB2 or an RB3, fine. But you definitely don't want that as your main guy. No disrespect to him, but just not good enough for this team. 5-yard pass from Prescott to Williams. Reed with the coverage. Second down and 5 at the Dallas 25. Dak under center. Lions bring in pressure. And there we go. CeeDee Lamb. Get the block. Get the block. Golly. Come on, Ferg. Schoonmaker. Block for CD. Jesus. First down, Cowboys. And then you needed Schoonmaker there to make the block, and CD points, and he just kind of stands there. He's like, block for me. Doesn't get the block. Nice 1-yard pass there from Prescott to Lamb. First down and 10 at the Dallas 46, and the Cowboys desperately need a touchdown. They'll take the field goal, but if we can get it to 17-13, we're in business. And Javonte Williams with the short gain up the middle. It's the lack of creativity and the lack of athleticism with the play calling and the running back himself. Bouncing it to the outside is going to be better for Javonte Williams than run up the middle. 3-yard run there by Javonte Williams. Hutchinson and Anzalone with the tackle. 2nd down and 7 at the Dallas 49. Shotgun set. Play action to Williams. Steps up. Goes deep. Got a man. Pickens. One-handed grab. And the flag comes out. There we go. And that's exactly what you want to do, right? You're going to end up getting the big catch out of CeeDee Lamb or George Pickens, or you're going to get PI. And that's a great job by Dak with the awareness. And again, they should be able to punch it in here momentarily. I mean, they're both jockeying for position, but Reed grabs him, right? And that definitely... Offsetting penalties. Jesus Christ, really? What's Ferguson doing? Jesus Christ, Ferg. What are you doing, Ferg? God, Ferg is really fucking up today. Offsetting penalties, and that takes away a potential touchdown. First, you get Ferg with a fumble and the turnover, and then now with the terrible hold there. Illegal use of hands from Ferg. Man in motion, Dak. Hands off to Javonte Williams up the middle. Predictable as you can be. Short gain. 3rd down. All right, 3rd down and 4 at the Detroit 48. And that was Malik Davis on the 3-yard run, not Javonte Williams. 3rd down and 4 at the Detroit 48, and we're at the 2-minute warning. (17-6) Lions lead. And if you're just tuning in, Bates with a 38-yard field goal to start it off, 3-0 Lions. Aubrey with a 57-yarder, making it 3-3. Jahmyr Gibbs with a 1-yard TD rush. Bates with the extra point, making it 10-3. Aubrey with another field goal, that time 42 yards, 10-6. And then obviously David Montgomery getting his first touch of the game, decides, you know what? I'm going to show everyone that I'm the real deal, Holyfield. 35-yard rushing TD. Bates with the extra point. 17-6 Lions. And again, self-inflicted wounds by the Cowboys. If they played a little bit more cleaner, the score would probably be, 17-13 or possibly even closer. But, again, they just have to keep it close as we get into the second half. Broncos Chiefs. I'm looking forward to that. (17-6) Lions. I expected a little bit more out of the Cowboys, but again, you knew that Lions were going to be doing a lot of blitzing, being very aggressive, at home. And, a few self-inflicted wounds by Dallas and poor play calling. Hopefully that'll be adjusted in the second half. But you're still in range right now. 3rd down and 4. Got to move the chains. Shotgun set. Lions rush 4. And a nice little slant. First down, Cowboys. Move the chains. There we go. Nice throw there by Dak Prescott. $14 for 18, 133 yards. No tutties just yet, but a nice job by Prescott to Turpin. Shotgun set on first down and 10. Lions only rushing 4. Going deep, one-on-one. He's open. And a bad throw by Dak Prescott. You don't usually see that. And if he would have timed it just right, that would have been a touchdown. He had a good lead on the DB. But a poor throw by Dak, which, again, happens here and there. But if he would have got him in stride, that would have been a touchdown. Second down and 10 at the Detroit 43. Dak, there we go. And again, if CD is going to miss an opportunity, you can go to George. And again, you can kind of predict on how they're going to go. Flag on the play. And that looks like it's going to be on the Cowboys. Yeah, interesting. I would assume that they'll probably try to get LeBron the ball to make sure he gets at least, 10 points. He's very aware of, his records and stat lines and whatnot. So, wow. And this is something that Pickens has been caught for, a few times with like offensive pass interference and whatnot. Sometimes, it does look like it's his fault with the push off. Other times, a little debatable. 96 penalties this season, tied for third most in the NFL, but the Dallas Cowboys are typically, up there with penalties. That's nothing new. Face mask there on George Pickens. That's unfortunate. Second down and 25. And then a quick pass to CeeDee Lamb to get half of the yardage back. Yeah, too many mistakes. And again, if the Cowboys were at home, the score might be flipped. 17-6 Cowboys, but, they just have to be able to be a little bit cleaner and a little bit, not as predictable, especially with Javonte Williams. Short middle to CeeDee Lamb for 10. Reed with the tackle. Third down and 15 at the Detroit 48. And now you're just trying to get a deep catch, or a PI call on one of the DBs there for Detroit. And they've been definitely blitzing pretty heavy on third down. So, that doesn't really give you time to be able to go through a deep route. All right, come on, Cowboys. I want this to be a close game. I don't want it to be a blowout. Both of these offenses are capable of getting to 30 points, more times than not, but again, offensive line for the Cowboys is getting dominated up front by the D-line of Detroit. Third down and 15. Good enough protection there. Bouncing off one tackle, 2 tackles, and just short of the first down marker by 2 or 3 yards by Ferguson, trying to make up for his bugaboos with penalties as well as, fumbling. And now it's 4th down and 4 at the Detroit 37. I mean, if you're going to get the ball back, you might as well go for it here. But again, if they're confident with Aubrey and the field goal range, then take the field goal. 17-9, there's nothing to cry about that. Putting yourself in position, especially when you got a kicker that good. Now, could Dak get the first down, by getting 4 by a quick slant to CD or George Pickens? Of course, but the way that the game has been going, you kind of have to just take what the defense gives you. You've had a lot of self-inflicted wounds. You haven't played a very clean, first half. A few mistakes here, a few mistakes there. Detroit's played pretty mistake-free. So take the field goal here. I like the call with the field goal. Now, if they didn't have a reliable kicker like Aubrey, then I would say go for it. 55-yarder, kick is up, and it is good. God, he's good. Money. 55-yard field goal. 17-9 Lions. Good call there. And again, if this was, college football or other NFL teams, like the Eagles, then we maybe see them go for it in that situation. But, it's not like they really can trust their running game, with Javonte Williams. Ferguson has had some penalties and some drops and a fumble. So really, your only option is CeeDee Lamb or George Pickens. And, at some point or another, you just got to take what the, defense gives you. So again, if the Cowboys are going to win this game, you're going to have to get CeeDee and George probably in the end zone. But again, no touchdowns in the first half, but there'll still be an opportunity for one or both in the second half. Got 50 seconds left. Dallas kicks off. Yeah, he does make it look effortless, doesn't he? Ooh, good special teams tackle there by Dallas. And we'll see what Detroit has lined up here, if they try to be aggressive and try to get into field goal range, or if they just run the ball, a few times and try to let the clock bleed out. Obviously, last run that we saw went 35 yards for a tutty from Montgomery, so we will see. One turnover for Dallas, nothing for Detroit. And Goff decides to throw on first down towards the sideline to Amon-Ra St. Brown, and a minimal gain there. Goff short right to Amon-Ra St. Brown for 4 yards. Revel there with the tackle. Second down and 6 at the Detroit 30. Goff on second down and 6. And a nice slant there. And Jahmyr Gibbs. And Gibbs hands the ball off to the ref, and a nice hurry-up offense here for Detroit. 4 wide receiver set. Goff on first down and 10. Throws to the sideline, and Amon-Ra St. Brown gets out of bounds. It looks like Detroit is trying to get points here before halftime. We'll see if Bates will get an opportunity for a long field goal. 9-yard pass from Goff to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Second down and 1 at the Dallas 43. 17-9 Detroit. Goff on second down and 1 and decides to throw it out of bounds over the head of Jahmyr Gibbs to kind of save a little bit of that clock. Third down and 1 at the Dallas 43. 13 seconds left here before halftime, and a good one here. 17-9 Lions lead. Yeah, good decision too, because again, if you end up catching it inbounds, depending on what you have to work with timeouts, you don't want the clock to just run out. You want to make sure that you're maximizing every opportunity. And definitely defenses, get a little bit lackadaisical in moments like this. Right before halftime, they're thinking about changing their cleats, going to the bathroom, looking over the game plan. And sometimes if you can catch a defense, sleeping a little bit on the last drive right before half, sometimes those points that you get at that point are the difference in the game overall. Look at those teams there in the wild card. Seahawks, Green Bay, Niners. It's the first time that we've had 3 teams in the NFC West with 9 wins at this point. And again, in the hunt, Panthers, Cowboys, and Lions, and those 3 teams have been playing pretty good football as well. So I do think the Buccaneers are going to win the division, but Carolina is going to, make it extra difficult. Third down and 1 after the Cowboy timeout. 3 wide receiver set, shotgun set, Dallas. And that might be PI on Dallas, and it is. You got to turn your head around. You got to stop grabbing. And that is a bad penalty on the secondary there by the Cowboys. What are you doing? Revel, the rookie. One-on-one with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Yeah, you're not going to win that battle. Man, that should be a felony. Defensive pass interference. Now it's 1st down and 10 at the Dallas 29 after that 14-yard penalty. Definitely in field goal range for Bates, but they're looking for 6. Shotgun set. Less than 10 seconds to go. Goff going into the end zone. And that could have been an easy touchdown right there to Tesla. Isaac. Oh. I mean, the defender falls down. And he threw it out of bounds. Gosh. Missed opportunity by Goff on the previous possession. Missed opportunity by Dak to CeeDee Lamb. And now it's 2nd down and 10 with 4 seconds left. They'll kick the field goal here by Bates. And we'll see if we have a 20-9 game here momentarily. 43 for 50 in his career. 86%. Pretty reliable there for Jake Bates in his 2nd season. Maybe not as good as Aubrey, but a pretty reliable kicker for the most part. Now, well, the rookie ended up getting the PI, and then the next play he fell down. He's got to be extremely lucky, Revel, that they didn't score a touchdown, because if they score a touchdown there, maybe the game is over. Like, I mean, it's not officially over, but I mean, if you end up having a 24-9 lead, there might not be just enough time, to catch up at that point. 47-yard kick here by Bates. Make it. Kick is up. And just inside the crossbar. Wow. We've seen a lot of kicks barely go through. Nice job by Bates. And now we have a 20-9 game. And Dallas, I mean, obviously you didn't play your best ball. You're down by 11. You could be down by like 17 or more. So again, not ideal. You're on the road. You're 2-4 on the road this season, so you haven't really played the best ball, but you've won 3 in a row. So you got to be able to kind of, get back to square one. And again, you're going to have to try to test the DBs. Defense needs to blitz a little bit more, to not give Goff so much time. And we'll see if Dallas can get the big play, on special teams or defense. They're going to need it. A pick six, a fumble for a touchdown, block punt, block field goal. They need something like that. And if they get it, then this game will be probably within 3. It'll be a little bit closer. But if they never get that play in the second half, it just kind of feels like Detroit's going to run away with this. Dallas may end up scoring a few more field goals and even a touchdown, but how much more points are the Lions going to put up? That's the question. They're at 20, pacing for 40, and they're probably not going to get to 40. They'll probably end up, in that 30 to 35 range. But again, for Dallas to be able to catch up, they're going to need a little bit of help. Yeah, well, these two teams match up pretty well with each other as well, just like with the Chiefs and the Cowboys. So, obviously, offenses are better with both teams, but again, both teams have defensive players, with like Houston and, they don't have, obviously, Micah Parsons there anymore, but you still got Houston, right? You still got Quinnen Williams. You still got a few guys that can make some plays. Bland on the Cowboys, and then Hutch and a few of the others like Branch on the Lions. So even though you don't really trust the Lions or Cowboy defense, every once in a while, they will make some plays that are significant. All right, we got 11 minutes to go before halftime is up, which is the great thing about the NFL. Halftime doesn't last long. In college football, it feels like it's like 15 to 25 minutes. So this will be right back into the action. And Dallas will receive the second half kickoff. So if they can get a field goal right out of the gates, they'll be down 8. If they get a touchdown, they'll be down 4. So again, if Dallas can end up, putting a good drive together in the third quarter, then this could go possession for possession, possibly the rest of the way. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on the Dono train. Looking for our first dono on the Dono train here today, and looking for 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it, baby. Yeah. Also, it depends on who's at home and who's on the road. Because think about it. If Dallas was at home, they might be up 20-9. obviously they play a little bit better at home with Dak, and they feed off the energy of the crowd. And obviously, like Detroit, they're going to play better at home as well when they're on the road. Sometimes they end up making a few mistakes here and there. So, and obviously the story has been Gibbs and Montgomery. Dallas doesn't really have a story for them, to be able to, kind of minimize what they're going to do. It's like, those running backs, when they get going, they're very dangerous, but you can also try to stop a little bit of the passing game. But a lot of self-inflicted wounds for Dallas, to prevent them from being closer in the matchup. And Goff has had more time in the pocket, than Dak. Dak has been running for his life for a majority, of that first half. So, and I feel like the play calling needs to be a little bit better by Schottenheimer for Dallas. A lot of wasted running plays up the middle with Javonte Williams, everyone knows you're going to run with a halfback dive or a counter play, and that's the go-to. But how many times in a row are you going to run Javonte Williams up the middle? Everyone knows it's coming. You're not going to get more than 3 to 4 yards max. It's not like it's David Montgomery or Gibbs up the middle. For you to be able to maximize Javonte Williams, you got to bounce him outside, and see if you can get some blockers downfield. You're getting a little bit too predictable with your running back, the Dallas Cowboys, but we'll see if they make the adjustments. Prescott, 16 for 21, 154 passing yards, but he's been sacked 3 times. You got to keep him clean. Especially when Amon-Ra went down on the first play on Thanksgiving, for him to be back, huge, especially since Sam Laporta is out. So, yeah, good blocker there by the Detroit Lions and Amon-Ra St. Brown. All right, we got 6 minutes to go before halftime is up. Cowboys will receive the football. 20-9, Lions lead. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. All right, what do we got on the college football slate tomorrow? Troy and James Madison, Kennesaw State and Jacksonville State, North Texas and Tulane, and then you got UNLV and Boise State. Saturday, BYU and Texas Tech, Miami and Western Michigan, Georgia and Bama, Indiana and Ohio State, Duke and Virginia. And I'll be watching Georgia, Bama, as well as BYU and Texas Tech. And we want Texas Tech to win. Oregon will be the 5 seed, and we won't have the bye. We don't want the bye. And we will be live streaming Saturday evening for the Hoosiers and the Buckeyes at 5 o'clock Pacific at Lucas Oil Stadium. Can't wait for that. That'll be on Fox with a global broadcast. So a lot of college football to watch on Friday and Saturday. All his beats are smooth, man. He's such a talented, artist and whatnot. He started playing piano at 3-4 years old. I started doing sports and, in around that same time window as well. And, if you do start early, with certain passions that you have, even though you may not know them at that particular time, he definitely is on the up and up. He's going to more studios. He's working and gaining some more rapport and obviously connecting, with more, other producers here in the Pacific Northwest with networking. And again, can't wait to see, what else he comes up with, moving forward, and we'll be able to continue to use, his beats here on the channel for pretty much the rest of my life. So, which is nice, when you have close friends where we can support each other. And again, I can't wait to see what happens for him professionally and personally as well here on this channel as well. Yeah, and he can make beats, that you could pretty much, whatever you listen to, if it ends up being, someone like Outkast or, Uzi, or, Drake or Kendrick Lamar, or if you want to hear like a West Coast beat, like with like an Exhibit, Dre, Warren G, Nate Dogg type of beat, if you want something East Coast like Jay-Z or Biggie, he can do it all. And, again, with that upgrade that I was able to help him get, when you get these upgrades, through your music, some of them are going to be expensive, $200-$300, but it gives you access to more sounds and more options. And, I want to make sure that he knows that, I believe in him. And, if I have a little bit extra that I'm working with, I want to be able to pass that along to him. So there's not very many people in my friend group that have dreams and goals besides myself and him. So, it definitely is an honor when I can end up helping out someone like that, who's not getting paid yet, for what he's doing, but eventually at some point he will. All right, we got 3 minutes to go here before halftime. Ends 20-9, Lion lead. Yeah, but he is one of those individuals. I mean, if you tell him an artist, he'll be able to come up with something. Doesn't matter how obscure it is. It could end up being an old school artist like Rappin' Forte, Celly Cell, either or you don't, A lot of people remember Loonies. But again, it's all depending on the music that you grew up with, whether it's West Coast or East Coast or in the Midwest. And, if you're a fan of hip hop, obviously like myself and a lot of others that are out there, it kind of just depends on what you started listening to. I mean, my first 5 CDs, and I've mentioned this before, I mean, I grew up in that hip hop era, but my first 5 CDs were Dr. Dre, The Chronic, right? Classic. Snoop Dogg, Doggy Style, classic. Biggie's double album, Life After Death, right? Tupac's double album, All Eyes on Me, and then Bone Thugs and Harmony. So again, it doesn't get any better in that window than those 5 at that point. And obviously I listened to, Young MC and, Vanilla Ice and, MC Hammer, prior to those, but that was kind of like, fun rap, and then you got into more of like the lyrical gangster rap, and whatnot. And even though there was other artists that came out like NWA, before Dre came out with the, the Chronic and whatnot, but, that was a little bit before my time and whatnot. I was, listening to other things. So, but I love being able to hear his creations and, can't wait to be able to see what else he can come up with. All right, we got 1 minute to go before the Cowboys here get the second half kickoff. And we will see if Dak can make a furious comeback for the Cowboys to win 4 in a row. They're on a 3-game win streak. But for that to happen, CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens need to get the ball, and then the defense needs to step up. They're going to need a fumble, an interception, a blocked punt, a blocked field goal, a pick 6, a fumble for a touchdown. They're going to need that. There's no way they come back in this game unless a play like that happens. Or if they end up getting a fumble or a pick, very close, to the end zone where it only takes a couple plays to score. If they're able to get something like that, if they're not able to bring it in, with a pick 6 or a fumble for a touchdown. So we'll see how it goes. But, they're close, but they're also that far away. A couple big plays by Detroit, then they're, coasting and they're not going to be able to catch up to them. So this is going to be a very critical drive for the Cowboys to be able to put up 3 to 6 points. And hopefully they do. You like the KC and the Midwest, huh? Like Tech 9? Einstein. Tech 9. Wow, LeBron only gets 8, huh? Well, there you go. What's more important, right? The points or being able to get the win. So who's your favorite like old school artist, and who do you like listening to now, Chief? Who's your favorite from back when you were younger, and like who your favorite is now? Uh, 11. Who had 11? LeBron or Rui? All right, we're just about ready to get back here into the second half. Got to play better on third down, expecting the blitz as well. So you got to be able to change all those deep routes, just do, short intermediate routes, slants, hitches, in routes, out routes. Because obviously if they're going to be blitzing on third down more times than not, going for post routes and go routes and stop and go routes, you're not going to have time to go to that. So, 11 assists. Okay. How many rebounds? 12th time they both have had a rushing TD in the same game, most by a pair of all time. But again, they have 2 RB1s. And I don't know if you can say that, out of any other team in the NFL besides maybe Ramondre Stevenson and Trayvon Henderson. Those are both ones in my opinion. Obviously, we need to see a little bit more of Henderson, but based on the small sample that we've seen, I think he's better than Ramondre. I think he is the one, and obviously with the Bucks, we have Tucker, who is a good fill-in back, and you got Rashad White, but those are more RB2, RB3. Bucky, even though he's undersized, is the RB1, but nobody is as good as Gibbs and Montgomery. I mean, Montgomery could literally be a running back on any team in the NFL. Like literally any team in the NFL, he could produce. Even the bad teams. You could put him on the Raiders or the Jets or the Browns, and he would produce. And obviously not as much as obviously he's doing here, but he's not getting a whole lot of looks with Gibbs as the front runner. Lil Wayne, nothing wrong with that. Blackstreet, no diggity, no doubt. I mean, I listen to everything. So you could have said Blackstreet or even Backstreet. You could have said either one. And, I listen to a wide range. So shotgun set, Dak, and a little slant route. Intercepted. Wrong team. Oh, baby. And that's the play that the Dallas Cowboys needed. And Detroit off the deflection. Barnes with the interception. And this might be the beginning of the end here. Wow. Underground artist. Yeah. Austin Reeves had 44. No Luka. What a play by Barnes. Holy cow. And the slant is usually there, but, good defense there with the tip. And Barnes with the good awareness, to be able to get that. Sometimes linebackers are not skillful enough to get the deflection off the, interception there. But nice job by Derek Barnes. And Pickens can't believe it. And now the Lions are in a territory where they're, about to pull away to a point where, unless they can hold them to a field goal here. First down and 10. You need to hold to a field goal, Dallas, or this one is over. Shotgun set by Goff. Throw towards the sideline. And Jamison Williams is there with the short gain. Cowboys need to get a turnover, on their side. But again, when you get too predictable, right, then sometimes, the other team notices. And Robertson, had that kind of play in mind. And, again, running halfback dives and counters with Javonte Williams and then running slants on third down, eventually they're going to pick it up. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what plays more than likely the Cowboys are going to do. You got to open it up, Schottenheimer. 2nd down and 8 at the Dallas 12. Jahmyr Gibbs in motion. Goff. Back of the end zone. Touchdown, Lions. Tesla. Touchdown, Lions. Uh-oh. And I was really hoping for a back and forth, game where it could have been like 38-35, but looks like we're not going to get that type of game here today. Must-win game for the Lions to keep up with the Bears and the Packers. Must-win game for the Cowboys on a 3-game win streak. But Jared Goff finding ways to get anybody involved. Even Isaac Tesla. Extra point is up and good. Cowboys need to respond very quickly. 27-9 needs to turn into 27-16 or 26-16 to 27-16. Earth, Wind, and Fire. Yeah, I listen to a lot of like 60s music and whatnot. So, I think as you get older, you go through different kind of phases and whatnot. I love Ozzy, rest in peace. I love hip hop. It kind of just depends on my mood, on what I want to listen to, and then getting kind of like that rock metal, being a wrestling fan back in the day, a lot of like wrestlers intros were that type of music. So, you never know how you're going to get introduced to certain type of music and whatnot. But I feel like a lot of the mainstream hip hop stuff that's out now is not very good. I would rather listen to stuff from like the 80s, the 90s, even stuff from like the 2000s. I feel like a lot of the stuff that's come out within the last 15 years, it's not that good. Like you get a few artists that have a few bangers here and there, but, it kind of just depends on who you like, Steppenwolf. 65-yard kick there by Bates, and that turns into a touchback. 1st down and 10 at the Dallas 35. Hey, that's okay. Van Halen, Boston AC/DC, Eagles, and Pink Floyd. Great choice. Hand off up the middle, bouncing it to the outside. And there's 3 Lions there. Three-yard run, which is pretty much what you were getting out of Tony Pollard and Zeke a few years back before they moved on from those guys. It's like you got a running back, but I mean, how effective is he really? Part of it is play calling, part of it is the offensive line not being very good, and part of it is just Javonte Williams being limited in his athleticism. Dak going down the field. 1st down, Cowboys. That's PI. And CeeDee Lamb is cooking. He's like, you know what? This guy's all over me, and I'll still catch the ball. Get off me, little boy. Nice job by Dak to CeeDee Lamb. Don't forget about your original superstar. You got another guy that can catch the ball. And there we go, the best run of the day. Javonte Williams, 1st down, Cowboys. Here we go. Let's make this a close game. I don't want this game to be over in the 3rd quarter. Let's go, baby. Let's go. $32-yard catch, 11-yard run. The best back-to-back plays the Cowboys have had up to this point. Detroit bringing the blitz on 1st down and 10. Dak going deep. One-on-one. Overthrows his target. George Pickens. Incomplete. Flag on the play. Wu-Tang. Who's your favorite Wu-Tang member? You got Old Dirty Bastard. I love me some Method Man and Redman. The Rockwilder, back in the day, I love listening to that. And then my favorite Wu-Tang song is Gravel Pit. When they used to have like LimeWire and all of those like downloading programs. Oh my God. I can't tell you how many times I listened to Gravel Pit in my life. Lots. Defensive holding there on the Lions. Now the Cowboys are cooking. That was on Reed. DJ Reed, the guilty party. Shotgun set. Dak, one-on-one. And CD going up with one hand. And he's slow getting up. Uh-oh. Oh, no. I hope he's not hurt. CD was trying to make the one-handed grab, and he might be done. Uh-oh. CD goes up with the left hand, tries to make the catch, drops it. Hope he's okay. Sometimes when you land on the football, you get the wind knocked out of you there, but the last thing that the Cowboys need is CD Lamb to go down, but if CD is not able to return, Pickens is good enough to get in the end zone once or twice for the Cowboys. There's no doubt about that. Ghostface, the Ghostface Killer. I got a lot of hip-hop and music knowledge. We don't talk about, hip-hop or music all the time on the channel, here and there, depending on when it comes up. But let's pray for CD Lamb. I hate injuries, but now this is a time for George Pickens to be able to step up. 2nd down and 10, shotgun set. Lions bring 4, quick pass. Flanoy there with the catch. Chief with a tenner. Thank you so much, man. Every dollar counts. Stacks. Racks with a little Cactus Jack. Bang, bang. Appreciate you. There's a particular player you want to showcase, like we did for you with the Jamal Charles on the last stream. Let me know when I got you. We're at 10:90 to go to hit the goal. Appreciate you very, very much. Every dollar counts. It'll go towards the internet bill, the streaming fee, or just taking care of Paisley. And those are very important things. Dak on 3rd down and 5, and corner of the end zone incomplete. Flanoy there, the intended receiver. And obviously not having CD out there hurts. And at this point, take the field goal. Don't go for it here. Take the field goal. Yeah, I think it's like sports, Chief. Once you get into a conversation with someone, you can tell if someone's a bullshitter or if they actually know what they're talking about based on how they talk about what they're talking about. Yeah, shoot me some music. Shoot me some music through Instagram and whatnot if you got some suggestions. I listen to a little bit of everything. Shotgun set, 4th down and 5. Dak is going for it. Nice catch. Let's go. Let's go. Oh, fumble. Touchdown. Cowboys. But what are they going to call? Are they going to call that the player was down? What are they going to call here? Wow. That was a weird sequence there. It was fumbled. You can't push it forward. 1st down, Dallas. Ooh, they got lucky. Good job by Detroit. And again, Cowboys with some good awareness there. Again, if they would have turned the football over there, it would have been probably game over for sure. But thankfully, they were able to land on that. Now it's 1st and goal. And now Javonte Williams is actually in a position where he can actually help his team score a touchdown. CD is out. Now you really only have 3 options, right? You run the ball up the middle with Javonte Williams. That's something they've already done a billion times for like 1 to 3 yards. So it's in the wheelhouse. You go to Ferguson to try to make him a hero, to make up for his bugaboo plays, right? Or you go to George Pickens, which might be your best option after 1st down. And looks like you got a gain of about 1 there, which is kind of in the wheelhouse for Javonte Williams. You could also run a jet sweep with Turpin, and he's fast enough to be able to get to the outside and score. But again, is Schottenheimer smart enough to be able to do something other than the obvious? Second and goal at the Detroit 1. You can also sneak it with Dak as well. And they go Javonte again. Touchdown, Cowboys. There you go. And Javonte is usually only 1 to 3 yards. So first time he gets a yard, then he ends up getting another yard. And lo and behold, touchdown. We damn boys. Cowboys in the end zone. Baby. There we go. Yeah, Brooks is underground. Again, eventually his name will get bigger and bigger with, the individuals that he gets an opportunity to work with. But I will tell you this, the people that he is networking with have made songs for artists that you're probably familiar with, big artists like Chris Brown and others. So again, if he can just get his foot in the door with some of these producers that have worked with like big famous artists, even if it's just for like one song, that could be huge for him. And again, I'm definitely going to be, rooting for him, as long as he's got the work ethic and, it is a dream that he wants to be able to succeed in. I can't, lead the dream for you. And, back in the day, I think he was maybe too concerned about what people thought. And, at some point you just have to believe in yourself and, surround yourself around people that are positive. And, I'm definitely rooting for him. 27-16 Lions. Now we actually have a ball game. Now, realistically, is Detroit going to win the game? Yes, but at least Dallas is making it interesting now. .41 left in the third quarter, 27-16 Lions. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it. Bye-bye. $90 subs to go to get to 23,400. Oregon, I mean, obviously, we're not afraid of anybody, again, if you can get to the Big Ten championship game, that's great. We got there last year, but again, just because you get in that game and if you win it, doesn't necessarily mean you're going all the way, as we saw with the Buckeyes beating Oregon. So I want Oregon to be the 5, so that way we don't have the bye with all that extra time off. And again, the Hoosiers and the Buckeyes might be able to have 3 weeks off and still win a game, but there definitely are going to be some teams in the top 4 that lose with that extended time, and again, we had everyone lose that had the bye last year. So we'll see if that ends up being the case this year. But again, I would have loved to been able to have an opportunity, as a Duck fan to go against Indiana or Ohio State, but it doesn't hurt my feelings. And again, hopefully we can kind of do what the Buckeyes did last year, kind of be on the outside looking in and be like one of the best teams that's not in the top 4 and then just try to go the whole way. And we'll see where it goes. So, but I think we match up, the best to Indiana and Ohio State out of everyone that's, in college football. And obviously those are the 3, teams in the Big Ten that probably have the best chance of going all the way. Obviously there'll be a few other teams, that people talk about like Georgia and a few others, but again, they haven't really been scoring the same amount of points as, previous Georgia teams. And if you look top to bottom, Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon are better, in my opinion, than Georgia, but you never know. Georgia could get hot and they could end up getting to the championship game, but I just don't know if they could beat any Big Ten team this year. I think the Big Ten obviously is king now. It used to be SEC, but not anymore. Loss of 5 there by Jahmyr Gibbs. Yeah, I mean, I've seen old videos, of people like in that jazz era, kind of talking. It wasn't really rap, but I guess they might consider it rap, based on how they were singing. But again, they had a lot of like jazz and folk music, back in the day, that I guess you could brand it, this is rap, but, even though it wasn't classified that back then. But I have seen some old videos that are like not AI, that are legit, back in like the jazz era, where they are, kind of rhyming, and, I guess you could quote it. It might be kind of like the first, kind of rhyming rap melody that you could have. But even back then, it wasn't considered that. 3rd down and 8 at the Detroit 34. Goff towards the sideline. Gibbs with the catch, pumps the brakes, and just like that, 1st down, Lions. Move the chains. Yeah, blues and jazz, all of that stuff. I'm pretty sure I've seen the video that you're talking about, or I've seen it on social media before. 10-yard pass from Goff to Gibbs. And Gibbs can stop on a dime. And a great job by Gibbs with his body control. 1st down and 10 for the Lions. Handoff up the middle. No, keeper. And Lions trying to get cute on a trick play there. Doesn't work. Second down and 9 after Malik Cunningham only gets a gain of 1 or slight no gain. Goff, 2nd down and 9, play action, goes towards the sideline, and Jamison Williams is there. 1st down, Lions, move the chains. And thankfully the Cowboys scored, so that way it's kind of close. They're still down, by more than 1 score, but at least it's like obtainable, where if they score and get a stop, or stop and get a score, that they could get into the 20s here sooner than later. But a lot of throws towards the sideline here, and if you can get Bland to jump a route, you could end up getting a pick 6. The Goff is starting to get a little predictable with some of those sideline throws. 16-yard pass from Goff to Williams. And Jahmyr Gibbs up the middle, running into 4 Cowboys that say, "We damn boys, sit down." 2nd down. I think I hear Paisley at the door. Good girl. Little screen pass. Oh, nice stiff arm there. Jahmyr Gibbs. So you can't handle me. Nice job. All right, Paisley is in here now. She misses daddy. 4-yard pass from Goff to Gibbs. Bland with the tackle and the coverage. 3rd down and 5 at the Dallas 34. Trips left. 4 wide receiver set. Goff. And almost intercepted there by the Cowboys. Good defense there. 4th down and 5. All right, come on, Cowboys. Let's score again and make this a game. We just want it to be back and forth. Long attempt here by the Lions. 52-yarder by Bates. Kick is up. Oh, baby. No good. There we go. And that's what we wanted, right? We wanted the game to be closer, and now, you get a field goal, then you're only down 1 score. You're down 8. If you get a touchdown, right, you're only down 3. So you're getting into the sweet spot now. You get the missed field goal, and now you score a touchdown to get it to 27-23. And if that happens, the Cowboys will have a chance to win this game. You just got to be able to kind of keep pace with Detroit. But a nice blocked field goal there. First down and 10 at the Dallas 34. Toby in the building. What's good? That's a good game. Colts and Jags, right? And we know the Texans are in the mix in the division as well. So, it'll be interesting to see what comes of that division. And, the Colts were the top team, for a good chunk of the year. But now the Jags and the Texans are getting hot at the right time. It's definitely going to be a war and a battle between those 3 teams. (27-16) Lions. 5:45 left in the third quarter. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it. Bye-bye. Jared Goff. Jahmyr Gibbs. David Montgomery. They need to give him the ball. Amon-Ra St. Brown. We see ya. And now it's time for Dak Prescott. I don't know if we're going to see CeeDee Lamb. I hope he's okay. But again, they do have another wide receiver in George Pickens, who might not have been able to really make a name for himself with shitty quarterback play from Pittsburgh. But obviously with a capable quarterback in Dak, you've been able to see that George Pickens can get the job done. Yeah, but the difference, though, Toby, is that the Niners and the Buccaneers have had more top-tier talent being injured. It's not the same with your team. Now, every team's got injuries, but nobody has had more significant, big-name injuries than the Niners and the Buccaneers this year. Hell, I didn't have Bucky Irving since week 3, and he just came back. Haven't had Mike Evans. Haven't had Chris Godwin, right? Jamel Dean and many, many others. If you go down the list with like Wirfs and all the top tier guys, we've been able to stay afloat, but hopefully everyone will get healthy at the right time. Four-yard run there by Javonte Williams. DJ Reader with the tackle. Second down and 6 at the Dallas 46. Dak. There we go, baby. First down, Cowboys with the chains. Flournoy with the catch. Nice 18-yard pass there from Dak to Flournoy. And a handoff up the middle to Davis. Short game. And this is, we're getting into Pickens. We're getting into that mode here in the late third quarter, fourth quarter. Give him some opportunities. Malik Davis with a gain of a yard. Williams with the tackle for the Lions. Dak, plenty of time. Throw to the sideline, incomplete. Oh, 25. Well, 25 is George Kirby now, but if it's like an older one, could have been Uneski Betancourt or David Bell or Mike Moore. Shotgun set. Dak. Nice hands. Hands. Team. First down, Cowboys. And that gives Ferguson to try to make up for some of his wrongs in the first half. But you still got Pickens and Ferg that can make some plays here. And as well as Turpin, getting him involved. 10-yard pass from Dak to Ferg. Anzalone with the tackle. Good hands there by Ferguson. Oh, it's a newer one in green. Maybe Kirby then. There's no name on the back, right? Dak on third down and long, wide open, broken coverage, but that is a flag, and we'll see if that's a push-off on Dallas. Wow. Pass interference on the offense, which is something that we've seen called a little bit more frequently lately. Yeah, the Bucs schedule relatively is easy the rest of the way after having the hardest schedule in the NFL for about 2 months. But again, a lot of those are going to be trap games, and we play Carolina twice. So if we fuck around, we will find out. And the Panthers could take the division from us. But I feel as long as, Baker is there and we're slowly getting guys healthy, like Jalen McMillan, who's been out all year with the neck. Mike Evans is starting to practice as well. Hopefully we'll be able to have a full offense and defense. And, I don't know if we can win a playoff game, but I definitely want to get there and win the NFC South for the 5th year in a row. Throw to the sideline, incomplete to George Pickens. Pickens wanting the flag, not getting it. And now it's 4th down and 19 for the Cowboys. It sounds like it might have been one of those free jerseys that they did as like a giveaway, at a Mariner game. Like a promotional jersey, not like one of the authentic ones. That's what it sounds like. And long kick is up. 63-yarder is good. Wow. There we go. Aubrey is automatic, baby. 63 yards. My goodness. Great snap, great hold, and a great follow through. Young Hoku could never. 27-19 after a game that looked like the Lions were going to run away with it. Now Dallas is in reach. That man in the building. How are you, brother? Yeah, and that's why the Buccaneers are pretenders. I love my team, but again, I'm not, going to be one of these people that's going to be in denial mode, thinking that we're as good as like the Rams or the Seahawks, even though we were able to beat, the Seahawks earlier in the year, just based on how those teams have been playing. Some teams are contenders, and there's going to be some teams that might be pretenders, but if we get healthy with enough of our guys, we might be able to win a game or two. And, you never know. I would be pleasantly surprised if we were able to overachieve and make it to the NFC Championship game. Probably wouldn't be able to win that game, but again, you just got to be able to win, the division first, get into the playoffs, and then we can, look at the matchups and see who Tampa matches up with. And they match up with a lot of the teams really well that, could be potential targets. Eagles, whether it be the Rams, the Seahawks, or the Niners, or the, Packers, the Lions, or the Bears. It's not like we really fear, anybody. We match up pretty well, but, the injuries have definitely held us back. And, even Baker with the, AC joint in his non-throwing hand, it's, obviously if it was his throwing shoulder, we would have been screwed, season over. But thankfully, it was not his throwing, arm, and we'll see where it goes. (27-19) Lions. Yeah, but unfortunately that, when you get certain players, like that Showtime, that's just who they are. Wide receivers are divas. When they don't get the ball, they love to scream and yell and complain, unless you end up getting someone that is disciplined, like a Marvin Harrison or a Larry Fitzgerald, a Jerry Rice that just lets the play speak for itself, with hard work and effort. A lot of these players are entitled and they have egos and whatnot. And, sometimes you just got to, put your head down and work. But again, some of these guys are divas. And again, when they don't get the ball, they like to complain. And, not every wide receiver is created equal. And a decent return there for the Lions. But even with the pouting by Pickens, he could still end up getting the game-winning touchdown or the game-tying touchdown in the fourth quarter. We know that. I mean, George has already proven that, he's a diva, but if you get him an opportunity, one-on-one, one-on-two, more times than not, if the ball is close, he's going to come up with it. So, I mean, some guys, mature and some guys do not. They were lucky they didn't snap it there where that Cowboy player fell down. Goff up the middle, and there's David Montgomery. And again, normally when you're, leading in the second half, what do? You run the football, right? You bleed the clock. But again, you can't get too cute and comfortable by just running with Gibbs and Montgomery every single time. You're going to have to be able to throw the ball here and there, But again, sometimes you get to see, how these play callers adjust or not adjust. And that ends up being the difference in the game. Nice 9-yard run there by David Montgomery. Man in motion on 2nd down and 1, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Goff up the middle. Nice jump cut there by David Montgomery. First down, Lions. Move the chains. And if the Lions are disciplined enough to keep pounding the rock heavily into the fourth quarter, they're going to win. But if they start fading, Gibbs and Montgomery, it will give the opportunity for the Cowboys to inch even closer into this game. And again, if you would have, told people the score would be 27-19 now with 2 minutes left in the third, after we saw what happened in the first half, some people would not believe you. But, again, you just got to be able to chip away. Goff, play action, flag comes out quick and avoids the sack lunch and throws it into the turf. And that's something that Goff has learned this season. You got to get the ball out of the hands as quickly as possible. After that 4-yard run there by David Montgomery, and illegal formation there by Detroit, another self-inflicted wound. But I'm happy that the Cowboys came back because I was hoping for like a 38-35 kind of game, back and forth. But the defenses have been a little bit better, than expected. They don't have amazing defenses on either team, but they play in spurts. They both have 2 or 3 guys on each side that can, change the outcome of the game. Bland, Houston, and obviously Quinnen Williams for Dallas, and then Branch, Hutch, and a few others there for Detroit. And there, a nice grab there by Jamison Williams. Second down and short here for Detroit. I mean, again, it could go either way. I mean, Detroit, normally when they lose a game, the following week they win. And they've done that for I don't know how many weeks in a row. They have an active streak going of I don't know how many games, 13, 14 games. After they lose a game, they end up winning the next one. And the Lions are at home, and they're 4-2 at home. So again, as long as they run the ball efficiently with Montgomery and Gibbs, it still may be a close game, even as close as 3 points if Dallas can, put up some points on their end. But you would think this is Detroit's game to lose. They should win the game, especially with the CD Lamb injury and everything else and whatnot. But, if the Cowboys were to come back, you would think that the defense and George Pickens would be the reason they come back and tie the game up or win the game. But will they have enough time to do that? We will find out. And now we go to the fourth quarter. Cowboys down by 8. They didn't play very good in the first half. Made some adjustments in the second half. but then CD ended up having a minor injury. We'll see if he ends up being back on the field in the fourth quarter. And we have a 27-19 game. So it's still, relatively close. It's not 27-3 and half of the country turned this game off already. So I'm thankful for the Cowboys of actually making this a competitive game. Just wish they were able to do a little bit more in the first half. So, all right, take care, Mike. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on the Dono train. We're at 10, 90 to go. And 5 to 15 subs. We're at 23,000. What are we at? 90 subs away from 23,400. Let's get it. Bye-bye. And we'll be off tomorrow. And we'll be back live on Saturday evening at 5 o'clock Pacific for the Big Ten Championship. Number 1 Ohio State versus number 2 Indiana. I've been salivating for this matchup for a long, long time. Now I wish Oregon was in it. But again, I still think that we are the third best team, in college football behind those two. Obviously, you got Georgia and you got, a few of these other teams, Texas Tech in the mix. But I truly believe that we are one of the best. And, I'm definitely going to be watching very closely. And if Oregon were to win it all, they would probably have to play Indiana early and Ohio State late. So, again, it's not going to be easy, but there's a very good chance the champion will come out of the Big Ten this year. Now, is it possible that an SEC or another conference team could win it all? Of course, but 3 out of the top 5 are from the Big Ten, Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon. And if you look at the depth that those 3 teams have, a little bit deeper, I think, than Georgia, Texas Tech, and a few of the others that are in the top 10. But again, with so much time off, a lot can change, with chemistry and continuity. And again, if you have too much time off and you're in the bye, if you're in the, college football playoff ranked 1 through 4, you're at a disadvantage instead of being, at an advantage. Like if you end up going 12-0 or 11-1 and you're a top 4 seed and you have a bye, it actually goes against you. So, for every year, you want to be a 5 seed or lower. So that way you continuously play. And we'll find out this year if all of the first 4 seeds go down, like last year, or if you're actually going to get some of those teams that win. We'll find out. But I agree, college football playoff is going to be great. The NFL playoffs are going to be fucking great because we got some new teams in the mix this year, which is awesome. Patriots are good, Bears are good, and for me that means life is good. Instead of seeing the same teams over and over and over. Now I, feel for Ravens fans and Chiefs fans, but they've been good for such a long time, and now it's kind of nice to be able to see some other teams have a chance, but again, we'll still see the Chiefs and the Ravens still have a chance to make the dance, but it's definitely going to be tough. Yeah, just smaller school. You know how it goes. Popularity, it's biased, and again, Notre Dame is more of a, bigger school name. It's not like Ty Detmer is playing, and even if Ty Detmer was playing, BYU, Brigham Young obviously is a smaller school. So smaller schools are always, going to be discredited. I mean, even when Boise State would be undefeated or only have 1 loss, back in the day, people didn't want to give them a chance, against teams like Oklahoma in like a bowl game. But, you definitely have seen over the years, just because you're a small school, or smaller school, doesn't mean that you can't win a big game. Whether it be in a bowl game or in the college football playoff, the BCS, or, whatever we're talking about, or, a championship game. 5-yard penalty there on Miles Frazier. First down and 15 at the 50. $13-yard pass from Goff to Montgomery. Defensive offside is declined. 2nd down and 2 at the Dallas 37. Plus, a lot of the people that have votes probably don't watch BYU, just like a lot of these people don't watch West Coast sports. And you can definitely tell the bias if you're like a Midwest or East Coast or a South, writer or, voter. A lot of these people don't stay up late to watch these other teams play, and it shows. Nice job by Montgomery up the middle, and that's kind of the key for them winning this game. If they keep going to Montgomery and Gibbs, the Lions are going to win unless they fumble. If you end up going heavy passing, then you're going to lose. So you have to be smart, have a nice, blend of running and passing plays, but you can't force it. Goff going deep. Wow! Out of bounds, but a great effort there. Tesla tried to make an amazing catch. That's going to be holding on the O-line. Yeah, but, if you guys miss it and then you guys have a great draft and a great free agency period, you could be right back into the mix next year. It's not like, you're done this year and then your team is going to be garbage, moving forward. Sometimes you got to take one step backwards to go 10 steps forward. If you can get that right player, like a Tyreek Hill type of player, and if you can get pieces like that, that could be the difference on kind of sparking, the team. First down and 20 at the Dallas 39 after that 10-yard penalty by Tate Ratledge. And some self-inflicted wounds by Detroit here. And Gibbs slips and falls. Don't tear that ACL, Gibbs. You're not the only one. I mean, there's a lot of people, that, are baseball writers, football writers, basketball writers. And again, a lot of the games on the West Coast are on very, very late, where if you were actually to watch, you wouldn't be going to bed until like in midnight, 1, 2 in the morning. And if you got a job that you got to wake up for, you're not doing it. And even these people that have jobs, that their job is to report on the games, even they don't stay up, to the conclusion of some of these games either. So Amon-Ra St. Brown from Goff towards the sideline, and again, when you see certain voters, that vote weirdly, it definitely shows you like who's watching the games and, who's just picking their favorites. So. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. It also depends on ratings and money. Like, if Miami played, they don't have Cam Ward anymore. Who are going to be watching more as fans? Are people going to be watching more for Miami, or are you going to watch more for Notre Dame? And Notre Dame isn't as good as they were last year. That's clear. But like, who's going to bring in more ratings? Like, if you're going to go out of your way, would you watch Miami play football, or would you watch Notre Dame? And those are the things that the committee will be going over too. It's money. Money, ratings. Every extra game is more money. And if you have two teams that are close, they're going to go based off popularity, on who can bring in more ratings and more money. Whether that's the right way to go about it, obviously is debatable, right? But that's unfortunately the world that we live in. That's how it goes. 46-yard field goal by Bates incoming. Cowboys are looking for another block. Kick is up and right down the middle, and it is good. 30-19, but the Cowboys are still in reach. They're going to have to get a touchdown and hope for a stop at some point in this game. I feel like, Caleb is benefiting off one of the best, head coaches in the game this year in Ben Johnson, as far as like a play caller. He's like Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay. Very brilliant, very smart guy. We saw how good Detroit's offense was with all those weapons. And again, the Bears don't have nearly the amount of talent, player-wise on offense. But again, they run the ball efficiently. They play good D. They had an easy schedule. Caleb is still kind of learning. Again, he definitely had some flaws in his game, based on his throwing mechanics, his footwork in the pocket. But again, if you watched him last year and this year, there's been a big improvement. He's nowhere near being a top 10 quarterback, but in the future, he'll have a chance, to be, somewhere in that 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 range if he continues to get better and better, as well as the Bears, continuing to get better and better. But, there's quite a few quarterbacks that are better than Caleb. There's no doubt about that. But Caleb got extremely lucky to be able to get, one of these top tier coaches. And obviously you've seen with Drake May, working with Josh McDaniels and having Vrabel handle the defense. Sometimes these second year quarterbacks are blessed by great coaching. And you got new coaches with Vrabel and Ben Johnson, right? Two of the best records in football by second year quarterbacks, Caleb Williams and Drake May, right? And again, if you put Caleb Williams on the Patriots, you probably, would have, similar, results where you're getting better and better based on who you have around you. And, and Caleb's numbers would be better if he was on New England, because obviously we know what Vrabel does on the defense. But again, the skill positions that the Patriot have, they may not have a bunch of big names, but again, Drake May is making everyone around him better. Like Mac Hollins is just like a normal name, but he's playing really well this year. Good chemistry, right? And you got, Demario Douglas and, Stephon Diggs. And it shows you anytime Stephon Diggs joins a team, that team gets better. He was good with the Vikings, right? And then obviously going to the Bills, he made Josh Allen a name. And now, even though he may not be the top receiver every single game, he's making a difference for New England, obviously with Drake May. So. More coachable? Oh, no question, Caleb. I mean, I know a lot of people don't like the whole fingernail painting thing, in the NFL. It's a little weird, you can express yourself in any kind of way that you want. It doesn't matter if you're, gay or straight or, anything in between. It's a little weird, to see the fashion of hip hop artists and sports athletes with the nail thing. That's not really for me. But again, if that's what you want to do, that's your own prerogative. It's kind of a distraction if you actually are being honest about things. But I don't think Shedeur Sanders is very coachable. He's a me guy, wish the best to him. But anytime you're in Cleveland, you're never going to succeed. So if Shedeur can go to another team, and be a backup for like the Niners or the Rams, you might be able to get the most out of him somewhere like that, But if he continues to stay in Cleveland, good luck. You're going to need it. Dylan Gabriel from the Ducks and Shedeur aren't good enough to be starters on that team. Dysfunctional. Dak, pump fake. And he jogs to that first down. Again, if you end up being entitled, and whether it be a Nepo baby and you end up having a dad that's going to be more famous than you ever will be in Deion Sanders, Shiloh ended up fucking up and got cut from the Buccaneers. And, again, it might be cool to have the Sanders last name, but that's a lot to have on your shoulders, to live up to Deion Sanders in that name. And, sometimes if you act like your dad and you don't have your dad's skill set, it will come back to bite you, and it already has. Nice job by Javonte Williams, but I'll tell you what, I wouldn't want Shedeur on my team as a second string, third string, fourth string. I wouldn't even want him there because he's a distraction. It's like, a guy that would want to put himself before the team. No, thank you. Now, does Shedeur have talent? Of course he does. But again, sometimes if you have a bad attitude, even if you have talent, it's only going to take you so far. Nice 11-yard run there by Javonte Williams. First down and 10. Dak, there we go. Flournoy with the catch. And again, if CD and Pickens are a little banged up, you got to go to Ferg. You have to go to Ferg. Even though he fucked up in the first half, you got to find a way to get him the ball at some point or another. Second down and 5 at the Detroit 42. Second down and 5. Play action. Dak going deep. He's got a man wide open. Go, go, go. Touchdown, Cowboys. Yes. Flournoy, let's go. Broken coverage. There we go. And again, I wanted a 38-35 kind of game. Look at the score. We're getting it right on it. Cowboys still may lose, but again, they have the momentum now. And again, great job by Dak. And again, CeeDee Lamb banged up, Pickens banged up, right? Ferguson been fucking up, with fumbles and penalties. And again, you have to make sure you test the secondary. And again, great route there. And Robertson, I don't know why he sat down on that route unless he thought it was going to be like a little bit of a curl route or a hitch route. And they're going to go for a 2-point try here. Shotgun set for Dak on the 2-point conversion. Run! And there it is. And there we go. There's Ferg. He didn't get the touchdown, but he did get the 2-point conversion. And just like that, 30-27, right? And the Lions had that blocked field goal. And again, now we're pacing for that 38-35 kind of game that I wanted, and we're there. Now, in the first half, it didn't look like the Cowboys were going to get there. But in the second half, we're getting it. And again, it's like you have to know your team. And again, I think if the Lions would have been more disciplined with Montgomery and Gibbs, not to say that you're not going to throw it to Jamison Williams and Amon-Ra, but again, this opened the door, for the Cowboys to catch up, and a very evenly matched game. 6-5-1, Dallas Cowboys, winners of 3 in a row. They played good. I normally don't get excited watching the Cowboys, because they're always in the conversation from these sports talk shows that they're, Super Bowl contenders. Now, they know goddamn well they're not Super Bowl contenders. And this is the first year we haven't heard it really that much. They're still probably talking about it on some of these shows to be able to rile people up and have a conversation so you can argue. But I like the way that the Cowboys have been playing, ball in 2025 as of late. They were 3-5, early on, but that 3-game winning streak, you started to see a little bit of a shift in Dak and the defense. And also when they got Quinnen Williams, it felt like there was a little bit of a resurgence, in their game. And again, they definitely have been playing some pretty good ball. Same thing with Tampa Bay and Carolina. Dallas, Tampa, and Carolina have shitty records compared to the other teams in the NFC. That's okay. But if you're playing good ball, with a 500 record or a game or two above 500, that doesn't mean that you can't catch up. And same thing goes for Detroit. They're 7-5. The Bears and the Packers and the Eagles and the Niners and the Seahawks and the Rams all have better records, but that doesn't mean with a couple more good games, they can be on the same level as those other teams. So let's go, baby. And this is what I want, when I'm calling games, on Sunday night, Monday night, Thursday night, or in college football. We want fun, competitive games. Obviously, when your team is playing, if you end up winning 30-0, you love it. But as far as like outsiders looking in, they probably turned it off, before the game even ended, right? So it's kind of nice if you don't really give a shit about either one. You want to be able to see, a good competitive matchup. And like some of y'all, you guys have, members in fantasy football on both of these teams or on one of these teams. So I'm really proud of, the Cowboys and what they're able to do. We know the lack of defense for both teams, obviously is a concern, but they've been handling the blitz a little bit better. The offensive line for the Cowboys compared to the second half. And we will see if they can get that punch out, that fumble, or that pick to really sway the momentum. But definitely the momentum has been for the Cowboys here in the second half. And look at that schedule. Vikings, Chargers, Commanders, Giants, Cowboys, even with the kind of a suspect defense, they could literally win 7 in a row. 4 more games here, and then obviously they'd have to win this one. But they could make the playoffs. So his play calling is a little suspect, but, definitely better than McCarthy. And they don't even really have a legit running back. Like, imagine if they got better O-line, better running back, and they got a few more pieces on defense for Dallas, then they would be that much closer to Philly, but they're still quite a ways away. 18-50. Let's get there, baby. And we're at 10 on the dono train, 90 to go. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. Help your boy out. 2-yard run there by Jahmyr Gibbs. Second down and 8 at the Detroit 43. But this version of the Cowboys that we've gotten in the last month, they feel like they can match up with anybody with a similar record. Like if we got Cowboys Buccaneers, Cowboys Lions, Cowboys Panthers, and even if the Cowboys went against the Niners or some of the other teams, you feel like they could kind of hang. They may not win, but they're going to hang, and that's what we want to be able to see for those teams that are on the outside looking in or trying to hang on. And the Panthers, the Buccaneers, and the Cowboys are playing some pretty good ball as of late. 3rd down and 6 after another 2-yard run there by Gibbs. They're trying to bleed the clock out, but again, you have to throw the ball a little bit. Not having Sam Laporta is really hurting the Lions. Shotgun set on trips right. Pressure up the middle by the Cowboys. And a nice catch. And Jamison Williams, 1st down, Lions, but I think that's holding on the O-line. Bring it back. Or it might be a late hit on Goff. Let's see what they decide to call. Looked like there was a hold on the O-line, but I'm not sure if they're going to call it. Maybe a late hit on Goff. Let's see. This could really swing the momentum of the game here. Personal foul. Roughing the passer. Oh, shit. That's not good. And Houston has to be better. Look at the throw by Goff, right on the numbers. Full stride by J-Mo. Hell, Marty went 14-2 and got fired. Roughing the passer on the Cowboys. Marty was the man. Man in motion. Goff, halfback toss. And Gibbs bouncing it to the inside for a minimal gain. Four-yard gain there by Gibbs. All right, less than 8 minutes to go here in the 4th quarter, and a good one, 30-27 Lions. And Dallas needs to hold the 3. Goff, hands off, Gibbs. Touchdown, Lions. And that might be the game right there. That might have be the nail in the coffin. Again, the Cowboys are going to have to score quickly, get a stop, score again. And again, with only 7:17 left, might just not have enough time. But again, it's been a good game. I wanted a 38-35 kind of game, and look at the score. We're getting there. Look at Penei Sewell up front, one of the best offensive linemen in the game, getting to the 2nd level. And if he's able to push that linebacker out of the way, look how big that hole was. I mean, Penei Sewell, go Ducks. I mean, he is an animal. There's a reason why he does the pregame speeches. Stud. Bates for the extra point incoming. Yep. Marty did. Extra point by Bates incoming. Kick is up. Right down the middle and good. 10-point lead. Browns, Chiefs, Redskins, and Chargers. But obviously most people remember him with the Chiefs and the Chargers, so. Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't matter, when they end up getting the score, you're going to have to get the field goal at some point. So if you go for the field goal first, whether it be a 50 to 60 yard field goal, if that's what, is in front of them, take the points, and again, you still hopefully will have enough time to try to get that touchdown. But again, the question is, if you get a field goal or a touchdown, can you prevent from Detroit scoring again? And they may not be able to. I mean, we'll see. Unless they're able to, force a long field goal by Bates and he misses or they block it. But, I was looking for a 38-35 game. It's 37-27. If you end up getting a score, 37-34, that's pretty close to the prediction. So, yeah, Bernie. Back when the Browns actually were legit back in the day. Dick Vermeil, yeah, before he became famous with the Rams and the Greatest Show on Turf. Yeah, big Eagles guy. And again, it's always good to, be able to, keep up on history and whatnot. So, I mean, I do a lot of reading and a lot of film study, but also I'm a little older than you, but, I started watching and, keeping up with stuff, when I was like 3, 4, 5 years old. So in the mid 80s. So, I've been able to, see quite a bit, but, also, you have to, watch a lot of NFL, and again, if you watch a lot of NFL Network, from back in the day or watching a lot of, programs, if you pay attention, you will be able to learn quite a bit, over the years. All right, we got 7:17 left. Like, my favorite part of the NFL was, remember back in the day when the day before the Super Bowl, ESPN or NFL Network used to show all of the Super Bowl, programs where they were like 30 minutes each, and they would go from like Super Bowl 1 all the way up to the current Super Bowl. I would stay up all night and watch every single one. I wouldn't even sleep. And I've already seen them before, but I loved it when NFL Network or ESPN used to do that. That was a special time. So that way you could, it's a condensed Super Bowl, but you get to hear a little bit of the action behind the scenes with the players and coaches, and then you get to see the big touchdowns and the big plays. It gives you a really good history of the NFL if you were able to be alive and you were watching at that time. So that was an awesome time. And I stayed up to watch all of those more than in one time. There was a few nights where I would stay up all night and watch those, even though I've seen them before, just to kind of get reacclimated and hype myself up for the Super Bowl. And we got a injured Lion down. Gibbs is too good. Same thing with Montgomery. Bates kicks off. Turpin, 26-yard return, first down and 10 at the Dallas 33. And Vaki was the injured Lion on the play. Yes, he did. 1964. But for a lot of us in the room, some of us may have been alive at that time. Some of us, not so much. Yeah, Redskins, they had a few good teams, over the years. You had the Theismann team, you had the Doug Williams team, and then you had the Mark Rippon team in 91. All right, 37-27 Lions. Yeah, you're a youngin'. I mean, that was the last time the Redskins, now Commanders, were relevant prior to, obviously last year and what they were able to get out of Jaden Daniels and whatnot. But the Hogs were for real back in the day. They were very, very good. Art Monk, Gary Clark, Mark Rippon, the Hogs up front, Darryl Green. They had some studs back in the day. All right, come on, Cowboys. Let's make this a game. Shotgun set. Dak, you got to get rid of it. It's 12 noon. You know what time it is? Time for a sack lunch. Yum, 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 yum. And that one was all on Dak Prescott. Get rid of the football, Dak. You can't hang on to the football that long. Loss of 9. DJ Reader with the sack lunch. Come on, Dak. And they were able to pick up the blitz a little bit better in the second half rather than the first. But Dak steps up in the pocket. There we go. Get up. There you go. First down, Cowboys. Good awareness there by Flournoy. Dak on first down and 10, another slant. And nice job by George Pickens there. Second down and 1 after that 9-yard gain. Pickens is a very good fit. You know, we know CeeDee Lamb gets injured pretty often, so that's a good insurance plan to have. You know, it's like when you have both, great. But then when one gets injured, you have the other one. Eight-yard pass from Dak to Pickens. Shotgun set, and Javonte Williams with a 5-yard gain. Come on, Dak. Aiden Hutchinson from behind. Yeah. There is an Elway special coming out pretty soon, and a few other specials I'll be watching. Schoonmaker with a nice catch there. First down and 10 for the Cowboys. Shotgun set, Dak. And Javonte Williams running into his own player and going down. About a 3-yard gain. And again, you're going to have to kick the field goal at some point. So, you know, again, you have to decide based on how much time is left. You don't want it to be so little time where you have to just, you know, go for the touchdown and then you have to go for the onside kick with, you know, barely any time left. But pass incomplete. Third down and 8 for Dak and the Cowboys. Third down and 8 at the Detroit 28. And they have been going to the slant, you know, pretty often, especially when the blitz is coming. Shotgun set. There we go. Detroit does not bring pressure, and that turns into a first down, Cowboys. And again, if you've noticed, when they blitz on third down, they get to Dak and for a sack or an incomplete pass. You know, when they don't blitz, they get burned for a first down pretty much every single time. You have to be a little bit more aware on what's going on here. And then a throw to the sideline. George Pickens is there. I mean, that's when the Lions were really dominating the Cowboys early on. You know, blitzing on third down. Dak doesn't have enough time. And then they decided to kind of be a little bit more safe, you know, with the man or the zone. But that shit ain't working. You're just allowing Dak to have more time to go through his progressions. That's awesome, Chief. Second down and 3 at the Detroit 11. Dak is a warrior. Man in motion. Shotgun set. They bring the blitz on second down. Dak throwing it away. Incomplete. And they should have done that on the previous third down. And that's probably what would have happened. And again, they have one more play to see if they can move the chains and get the touchdown. If not, you will see Aubrey come out for a field goal. And they still have enough time, to catch up in this game. And imagine if the Cowboys were to catch up and this game goes to overtime, it probably favors them to win, even though they are the road team. But they still got a long ways to go before we talk about that. And luckily they have, roughly, just under 4 minutes instead of like 2 minutes. So they're still sitting in pretty good position here. And you never know, where the Lions might have their first fuck up of the game, where they fumble or they have an interception, something to sway the momentum. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it, baby. Big third down and 3 here for Dallas. Shotgun. Oh, false start by Dallas. Jesus Christ. Tipped and incomplete. And undisciplined play by the offensive line. And now you will end up getting the field goal unit to come out, idiot. Uh-oh. Anzalone? Is it going to be offsetting, though? We had a false start. And if Anzalone has a penalty also, that would definitely bail them out. Yeah, I hope it works out for you guys. I know Lane Kiffin will make LSU a contender sooner than later. I'll tell you that. They'll be a top, 10 team before you know it. Pass interference on the offense. Declined. 4th down. Wow. What about the false start? What about the false start on Dallas? And then Branch is down. Seems like he gets hurt almost every game. And now it's 4th down and 3. Yeah, there's no offensive pass interference. If anything, it should have been false start on the Cowboy O-line, on the tackle. Yeah. And they love calling, offensive PI on like Pickens and CD and all that, but, make it make sense. And all we want as fans is consistency, right? We know that people are human and they're going to fuck up, but conveniently, we always see like things called that are bullshit, like PI, or calls that aren't called, like that false start. But, they need the field goal anyway. So let Aubrey get the field goal. They got, 3:50 left. Now Branch is injured. So now, if you get another chance at it, another crack at it with like a minute to go, you can go to Branch's side. They're not going to have him probably playing the rest of the game, and you might be able to go over the top with Pickens to be able to get into the end zone. Yeah, it is a mess, but again, was Ole Miss really that relevant prior to him? They've had a few guys like A.J. Brown and, Burks and, and a few others, come out, Elijah Moore, and a few guys. But again, when you have an opportunity to go from Ole Miss to LSU, you're gonna go to LSU. That's a bigger school, and it gives you a better chance to recruit, that, hey, I'm at LSU, you want to come? Rather than, hey, I'm at Ole Miss, where they might say, no thanks, Kick is up and good. No disrespect to Eli and a few of the others like DK and, Burks and Elijah Moore and a few others that came out of there. But, as far as, hey, you're going to go to the school that Burrow went to, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and a lot of the others, Honey Badger, so, LSU definitely is more marketable, and college football is better when LSU is elite. It's just the facts. Field goal is good. 37-30 Lions. Yeah, and plus, if you end up leaving, on kind of bad terms, realistically, the coach, Lane, or, the university probably isn't going to want him to coach the rest of the way, especially if he's leaving, to go to a rival. So, as far as like Oregon, we're losing our offensive coordinator to Kentucky, our defensive coordinator to Cal, but the relationship with Dan Lanning and the team is so strong. We have respect. So they're going to continue to coach, and manage both, schools. And that's pretty rare. You usually don't see that very often, but I'm not concerned one bit. We're going to be able to get a bunch of, opportunities from guys that are going to be promoted within, or we can always look on the outside and bring new guys in. But I know that we're going to be successful. So. And again, I'm very familiar with Lane because obviously, being a Buccaneer fan, I had Monty Kiffin, his dad. But again, him and his dad were completely different. Monty was passionate, but a little bit more, respectful and reserved, but would get, into it when he needed to. A very intelligent guy. And then Lane, obviously is kind of the opposite of his dad. A little bit more brash, a little bit more direct, a little bit more of a shit talker. But with that being said, a good coach, and a coach that could definitely, take LSU, to being a playoff team, which is something that they've needed, in quite a few years now. So. Yeah, same thing with Ryan Day. Chip left, defensive coordinator went to Penn State, and they're able to reload and retool. And again, when you're a team like Oregon or Ohio State, you're going to continue to, retool and to be able to, continue to be dominant, with recruiting, and not only that, with player assessment as well as, coaching advancement as well. And a good return there by the Lions. Yeah, but now with betting being legal, now you're starting to see more cheating in sports, and it's starting to get exposed. So I feel like gambling in general has ruined sports, again, because who's involved? The players, the referees, the coaches, and they know someone that they want their friends to win money, and whatnot. Any kind of inside information, that can be spread so that way people can win money. So you have to think, was there some, collusion and cheating going on before gambling was legal in some of these states? Yes, but now the problem is even worse, and you're starting to get more players and coaches that are willing to take the risk, to be able to just make a few extra bucks, which is sad. And it's happening in basketball, baseball, football, hockey, you name it, it's happening. And Branch is on the cart, and that is not good. $37-30 Lions, but great heart by the Cowboys. And again, they've won 3 in a row. Again, if this game was in Dallas, maybe the score is 37-30 Cowboys. Again, that would have been the X factor, whoever's at home, because these teams are pretty evenly matched. And a big catch there. And Amon-Ra St. Brown making maybe the nail in the coffin play. First down, Lions, Jared Goff and the Goffettes. And when Amon-Ra went down on Thanksgiving, a lot of y'all lost in fantasy when he got hurt on the first play. But guess what? He's healthy now. Great hands, great route, and that might be game. Nice job by Amon-Ra. I see you. Yeah, absolutely. Not just him, though, too. There's others that were involved in that as well. So, current coaches, current players, former coaches. People are so greedy, in gambling, and depending on how much in debt you are, people are willing to risk their careers just to be able to get back in the green so they're not in the red and they owe people money. And again, if you owe the wrong people money, you might not be around, especially if it ends up being like the mafia or, people that are powerful. They can make people disappear. There's a lot of individuals that are in Vegas deserts that will never be found unless you dig. Facts. And Cowboys lose the challenge. The call is upheld. Nice 37-yard pass from Goff to Amon-Ra. And again, with no Sam Laporta available, you have to be able to go to your reliable targets. And Amon-Ra St. Brown is one of the best wide receivers in the game, and he showed you why. And again, special teams returns by Detroit have been great. And again, if Dallas had better coverage there, maybe, we have a little bit closer of a game at this point. Oh, yeah, they were already running a sting operation on that for years before they made arrests. They're not going to just, jump the gun. They're going to have informants and other individuals, involved before they actually make arrests. So they were already spying on Chauncey and all of those individuals in the mafia and the mob from different, mobs and mafias. It wasn't just like one, it was a different crime families that were involved. And, they might be rival crime families, but one thing that they do have in common is they love money, right? And again, they can end up working together if they can win money, especially from people that are naive, thinking that things are fair when things were rigged. Gibbs bouncing it to the outside, touchdown, Lions. And now, game over, nail in the coffin, bye-bye. Jahmyr Gibbs doing Jahmyr Gibbs things. Three tutties by Jahmyr Gibbs. Way to bring that electricity there, Jared Goff, and the offense. I'm just happy that I got Bucky Irving on the team. He's like a version that's close, but again, there's not really anyone that's close to Gibbs. He's in a category of his own. But if there was someone right below, again, Bucky Irving is that guy. And again, like we mentioned earlier, we do like Travion Henderson a lot too. We'll see how that pans out, moving forward. Extra point is up and good, and now this one is essentially over, but at least it got to the point where it didn't get decided until 2 minutes left. And I was looking for a 38-35 kind of game, and we might have a 44-37 game. But again, defenses, were exposed at times, played okay, but really the difference was the lack of special teams coverage, by Dallas, and then Detroit with just too many offensive weapons and obviously too many injuries for the Cowboys. Even though Branch went down with an injury as well. Must-win game for both. Detroit will improve to 8-5. Cowboys will drop to 6-1. And they still will have a chance to make a wild card, the Cowboys, with an easy schedule the rest of the way. Lions with the kickoff. But at least it made for like an entertaining game. Like we ended up getting 74 points combined. I mean, there's been some games that we've done here on the channel where, they combine maybe for like 20 to 25. So this is nice. Obviously I was hoping for a little bit more Dallas, to keep it a little bit closer, but not surprised by the score one bit. I mean, best case scenario for me, it would have came down to whoever had the ball last, and that team would have won, with like a late field goal or something of that nature. But 44-30, I can't complain. Bates with the kickoff. Turpin with the return. 26 yards. Shotgun set for Dak. First down and 10 on the Dallas 31. Go deep, Dak. And he does. 1-on-2. And incomplete. A little lack of effort there by Pickens, at least diving for the ball. I would like to see a little effort diving, but, when you're a diva, I guess you don't dive. Look at that. Most touchdowns before turning 24, tied with Barry Sanders. 3 more than Randy Moss. Is that good? Damn right it is. Anytime you can be mentioned with Barry Sanders, and you're going to surpass that record because we still have a few games to go. Jahmyr Gibbs, crazy good. The modern day Barry Sanders, even though there are different types of backs. Uh-oh. Wow. Through the hands and incomplete. If that would have went up in the air, that would have been an interception. All right, we're at the 2-minute warning as we look at the NFC playoff picture. Bears, Rams, Eagles, Buccaneers, Seahawks, Packers, Niners. And it's a lot deeper in the NFC than it is in the AFC, you know, where you got the Patriots, the Broncos, and the Bills, and then a bunch of other teams that we don't really know if they're going to do anything. Chargers, Chiefs, right? You know, looking at the AFC South with the Colts, the Jags, and the Texans. A lot of the others may not be able to win a game in the playoffs. They might be able to get there, but can they win a game? We'll see. I mean, the Cowboys only have to compete with the Eagles, right? The problem is the Lions have to compete with the Packers, which is normal, but also now the Bears, which took over the Vikings role from last year. The Vikings went down into the shitter and became the new Chicago Bears of old. And then now the Chicago Bears have turned into the old Vikings. So now you got 3 teams. We never expected Chicago to be this good this year. Shotgun set. Dak. Little check down and complete. Yeah, Tim Brown is a good receiver, but not as good as Randy, T.O., or Jerry. But Tim was good, though. Tim would be on the second tier with like Chris Carter and, you know, a few of the others. But I get what you mean. Like Larry Fitzgerald is better than Tim Brown. That would have been another one. Or Megatron. That would have been one you could have put in there. Megatron, right? Yeah. Well, if you wanted to throw that in there just because of your Raiders, you know. And pass Prescott. Pass short middle to Ferguson. Incomplete. And now it's 4th down and 10 at the Dallas 31. But Tim Brown was very, very good. No doubt about that. He did. With Lou Holtz. Good old sweet Lou. Lou Holtz. I watched back in the day. Hell, I had a Notre Dame starter jacket back in the day. Call reversed. And they had Rocket Ishmael. And even after that era with Jerome Bettis. You know, I've always watched Notre Dame football from back in the day. Call overturned in the booth review. 1st down and 10 at the Dallas 41. And again, we'll be off tomorrow, and we'll be back for the Big Ten Championship at 5 o'clock Pacific between Ohio State, number 1, versus number 2, Indiana Hoosiers. And I can't wait. I'll be watching a lot of college football tomorrow and Saturday, but the next stream will be Saturday evening. And we'll be doing Texans-Chiefs on Sunday night, and then Eagles-Chargers on Monday night. 2 good games, similar to this one. So really looking forward to those matchups that we get on Sunday night and Monday night as well. Nice job there by Turpin. "21-yard pass from Dak to Cavante Turpin. Robertson with the push late. 1st down and 10 at the Detroit 38. Shotgun set on 1st down and 10. Pressure off the edge. Dak steps up in the pocket. And Ferguson with the catch. But there's a flag on the play. Anzalone with PI, decline, 1st down, Cowboys. Yeah, Anzalone all over him. Golly, let go. 15-yard pass from Dak to Ferg. Jake Ferguson, 1st down and 10 at the Detroit 23. Oh, it's 12 noon. You know what time it is. Time for a sack lunch. Yum, 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 yum. Yeah, hopefully CJ will be healthy enough to be efficient out there. It'll be a fun game. You know, the Texan defense is very, very good. Number 1 in points allowed this season. You know, Denver, you know, is the number 1 in sacks. But Houston is number 1 in a few categories as well. And we'll see if Nico Collins and CJ Stroud can get on the same page. Dallas timeout. Second down and 16. Shotgun set. Dak. Nice throw. And intercepted. Wow. Great jump there on a pass that I thought was going to be caught. But a good jump there by Detroit. And now this one is over. Oh, yeah. Pistons are probably going to smack the Blazers. We were lucky to beat Cleveland on the road, but, you know, Cleveland isn't as good as they were last year, but we'll still take it. But, you know, very young team, so. Kraken allowed 9 goals. Yikes. He rips it out. Wow. How did Reed rip that out like that? Yeah, who would have thought after the Pistons were like dog shit for years and years and years, now they're one of the best teams in the NBA, you know, with the OKC Thunder. And there we go. Kneel down is done. 3 turnovers for the Cowboys, 0 for the Lions, and that's the story. 3-game winning streak will come to an end for Dallas, but they're still playing, you know, some decent football at this point in the season with injuries and, you know, some limited options on offense and defense. We should get one more kneel down and we'll be good to go. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. We're at 1090 to go, and we're looking for 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it. Bang. And that is it. Final score, Lions 44, Cowboys 30. So tomorrow we will have the day off, you know, until we can end up getting better support on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We're not going to be doing streams on those days, you know, for NBA or NHL, just because we can't get enough support. But, you know, as we get into maybe February, maybe we'll get a little bit more support at that time. But we'll continue to do NFL, college football, and there will be some, you know, days where I end up doing 2 streams in a day to make up, you know, for maybe not having a stream on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Friday. But we'll see. You know, if there ends up being, you know, college football on a Friday, you know, we could potentially do something on that day. But there's nothing really worth doing tomorrow, you know, based on the matchups. So, again, we're going to stick to, you know, kind of the normal schedule, you know, Sunday night football, Monday night football, Thursday night football, and then obviously whatever's going on with the championship games. So the next stream will be on Saturday, you know, for the Big Ten championship at 5 o'clock Pacific between the Buckeyes and the Hoosiers. Number 1, Ohio State versus number 2, Indiana. So love you guys, and I appreciate you guys very much. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. Appreciate you guys. Final score, 44-30 Lions with the big victory. And again, we will be live Saturday evening at 5 Pacific for the Big Ten Championship, the Buckeyes and the Hoosiers. Love you guys and appreciate you guys very much. And I got one question for you. Who you know talks sports like us? Your boy Ryan, Northwest Sports Fanatics, and I'm out. Okay.